Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game.
Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Well, good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. It's Monday, November 27th, 331 days into the new year, just 34 days left. That's right, and we are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet and KJCR. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? Yeah. Back in the chair. Seems like a month of Sundays. Nothing like 4 days off. I hope you guys had a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving and, got a chance to hang out with friends and family and all that stuff. The update for us is the dinner was perfect. And yes, we ended up deep frying the turkey. And I've got to say, I'm going to go official right now. That's the only way to go. Deep fried bird. Oh, my goodness. Unbelievable how good that was. And it's funny, we were talking about that last week on the show. And then, you know what? Surprise, surprise. We ended up deep frying the turkey. And everything on our plates was perfect. It was just a great evening with family, and I hope you guys all did the same. Now here we go. Did you guys go out and do Black Friday? We did. Well, we attempted, I should say. Did a couple of things. We had to go, and just driving. If you were driving in the valley and you were anywhere close to a shopping mall, it was gridlock. And so we went through that. And I'll tell you something funny. So then we had a list of stuff that we needed to get, just stuff, backup drives and some other stuff. And so we went by Fry's. Okay? Didn't seem that bad. I mean, the parking lot was full, but it didn't seem that bad. So we go in. And we got all of the, because we're in the business, man. We're in the media business. So we're there getting stuff that we just needed for the bunker. And, we were going to work all weekend and do stuff. And so we fill up the shopping cart. And then we're walking through Fry's. And we're looking at the line, which I thought, came out, because they have like 25 cash registers there. And that part of Fry's doubles up. And so sometimes on a busy day like this, you'll see the line come out of that area and then come across the store, which we did. And so we're walking back and we're going back. We're following the line. The line went out and around to the back of the store, then to the left and headed out to the other side of the store. And Fry's is huge, right? And then looped around and then curved all the way back, like 100 yards, all the way to the other side of the store into the corner. And we're just, pushing the shopping cart, And Rita's like, that's it. We're blowing this popsicle stand. We're not going to wait. I'm like, honey, let's give this a chance. And I'm thinking, no way. We go all the way to the back of the store, into the corner. Now it's starting to build up and curve around. There's a dude back there with a balloon at the back of the line, a fries guy. And I said, is this the end of the line? And he's like, yeah. And we stand there. Rita goes, that's it. That's it. I said, honey, let's just wait for, let's give it like 30 minutes. Let's see how fast the line goes. She goes, I'll give it 10. Now, we waited 30 seconds. I had a full shopping cart. We spent 90 minutes shopping in the store. All of this stuff, man, the booty, the treasure. And I turned to the dude with the balloon, and I pushed him the shopping cart. I said, we're out of here. And we left. That was our Black Friday. So there you go. So we ended up, we blow out of fries. Right there in Burbank. And we go out to dinner. We were going to go to a movie. We ended up, we went to Wood Ranch, great restaurant. And we sat down, we ordered food, and we ended up, we took everything. We doubled our order, ribs, and just told the waitress, pack it all up into bags. We're going to blow out of here. And we just went over and hung out with family all night and ate ribs. Again, a second night in a row. This is the night after Thanksgiving. And just had a relaxing night, and that was, we didn't go to the movies. And that was just like how our weekend was. And we just kicked back and just had fun all weekend. So I hope you guys did the same thing. I can't even believe it's been, it was 5 days ago that we were last on the show. We have never had the opportunity to take 4 days off like that, but we did. And, man, bushy-tailed and bright-eyed, man, all ready to go. We've got an amazing week lined up on the show. 3 first-time guests again. And I posted last week, and I really mean this. We have done 760 shows. 760. And it is a full-time job to go and find intriguing, interesting, the best, the brightest guest, and try to introduce fresh stuff, to you, the audience, because that's what's most important, to find knowledge, and get that fresh stuff here. All of the all of those great researchers and names that we know and love over the years. Yeah, great, fun interviews, fun night, fun evenings. And we've done a lot of that. But for me, having 3 first-time guests or any first-time guests on the show is what's most important, because even back in the day when I was a kid, listening to overnight talk radio and coast to coast 20 years ago, having guests on the show that I've never heard of before, those were the evenings that I look forward to the most. Sure, I wanted to listen to Travis Walton or things like that. That's all great. But having a first-time guest, that's where my attention was just focused. And that's what we've got again this week. Tonight, Chance Gardner is here. He's director of the Magical Egypt series that I have talked about on this show so many times. And now tonight we have Chance on the show. So I'm like a kid in a candy store. Chance is with us, and we're going to talk about Magical Egypt 1 and 2. The new series is out. We have been watching it. Highly recommended. It's absolutely amazing. We'll be talking about that tonight. But how cool is that, right? Chance Gardner is with us. Tomorrow night, Alexis Brooks is here. Now, Alexis, we became friends with Alexis. I'd have to ask Rita this, but I'm going to guess and say we met Alexis 3 years ago. Chance meeting, by the way. Rita and I and Alexis, and we just became friends, right, over the years. And we've just never had the chance. She's always busy and writing and doing her own show. And we've never had the chance to get her on the show. But we did this week. We finally buttoned it down. I'm going to tell you right now, she's so busy. We've been trying to book Alexis for the last 3 months. 3 months. And tonight's the night. So we finally have Alexis, or tomorrow night's the night. We finally have Alexis here. And first-time guest, right? And then Wednesday, Riz Verk is here. Riz Verk is an extremely successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur and author of The Treasure Hunt. And he has been on the front of not only producing films and products and software in Silicon Valley, but he has a firm and vested interest into the supernatural and everything that is involved with it, from UFOs to near-death experiences and the supernatural and awakening, all of that. And this is a guy that is extremely successful. So we're going to be dealing with not only the paranormal and the supernatural on Wednesday, but we're going to talk about The Treasure Hunt, his book. And it's going to come from a side that you're not going to expect, especially from somebody that has been as successful as Riz has over the years. And some of the products and companies and websites and the internet and technology that he has been involved with over the years, it's going to blow your mind. And so that is Wednesday on the show. Thursday is going to be another Fader night with, of course, John Rappaport and Open Lines all night long. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube, everything is Fade to Black, Jimmy Church Radio. Okay, if you want to hang out with us in the sandbox on Twitter, that is hashtag F2B tonight. The chat rooms are open over at Spreaker and KGRA The Planet. And, of course, if you have any questions or comments during the show, please use hashtag F2BQ. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. All right. Now, a couple of things really quick. We launched over on the website our new news section, and we finally got it up and running today. It's fully functional, so you can go and check it out, and all you have to do is just go to jimmychurchradio.com at the top of the page, click on news. But this is pretty exciting. Now, the reason why it's exciting is we have the opportunity here to cover not only the paranormal, supernatural, and awakening, and science, and UFOs, and technology, and everything that interests us, but it's a chance for us to vet the news sources and make sure that what we present to you is cool. All right? There isn't going to be anything that is depressing or none of that. No. Hopefully, you're going to enjoy all of it. Maybe. Just go to the news section over at jimmychurchradio.com. All right? Now, we are going to keep this updated 24/7 and keep it fresh. But this is a very big deal for us. So spend some time over there every single day. I'm hoping, and this is Rita and myself, our goal is that, you know what, every day you're brewing your coffee, you're getting your day started, and this is where I want you to go. Okay? I just want you to just go straight there and start your day. All right? Maybe at night, you get home, you ease into bed, and you're fade to black, and you're going. Head to the news section. Okay? That's our desire. That it is your place to go. Okay? So a lot of work has been put into it. I want to thank, of course, Rita for doing everything, and Drew for putting up with us. Okay? But it is all there and up and running and functional. All right, here we are on 11/27. Okay? We're at the end of November, and I've been talking about this all month. I gave it a rest for about a week, but what happened to the 15 days of darkness, people? The 15 days of darkness that was supposed to be here. The prophecy, right? The rumors, and of course, it wasn't going to happen. But people bought into it. And about, I'm going to say 3 weeks ago, because we're 3 days away from the end of it, November 30th. But about 3 weeks ago, I started getting email, a lot of it, hey, man, you haven't been talking about the 15 days. What do you think about this 15-day? Are you concerned about it? It's all over the place, and I'm kind of freaking out. And it's just like, man, people buy into things. And it's not that they are gullible, okay? That's not even the point. It's that some of this stuff is effectively written. And when you go and you read something that says NASA has provided the White House with a 1,000-page top secret document, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and that's it, man. We're going to be, and it looks legit. And I can't blame some that get sucked into it. But I've been diffusing this and laughing about it. I don't want to laugh about I'm laughing about the reality of, do you know what it would take to have 15 days of darkness? Right? I mean, on a serious 10-cent tip. So here we are. It's November 27th, and no darkness. Did I sleep through the 15 days of darkness? That is funny. So there you go, man. We got 3 days left. I'm going to bring it up on the 30th. Okay, which is also, let's not forget, there's 3 days left to enter the next late night podcast contest. Okay, the late night podcast star, the next host. There is just 3 days left. Now, we've had a lot of entries over the last few days. I realize that it takes a lot of work to put this together. But there's just 3 days left. Okay, so if you are procrastinating, we are not accepting anything after the 30th, midnight 30th. That is the drop dead date. You send us something on the 31st, it ain't going to happen. Okay, so don't blame anybody but yourself if you don't get in by November 30th. Okay, now it's very simple. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com, click on Game Changer. All of the rules and how to enter are right there, and it's nice and clear. We need three things. We need an audio recording of your podcast show idea. We need the podcast name, and we need artwork with a logo in banner form that you would use for your website or promotion. It's that simple. Okay, November 30th, 3 days left, and the competition is stiff. I want to thank everybody. The grand prize is a Tascam Mini Studio Creator US42, a Tascam TH-MX2 headphone, and a Tascam TM95GN microphone, cables, everything that you need, courtesy of Tascam Professional. Okay, so you will have everything you need for your podcast studio. So just make it good and get it in. Okay? All right, where am I? Our next event, by the way, is coming up. It's the Conscious Life Expo. It's February 9th through the 12th, 2018, at the LAX Hilton. Tickets and info over at consciouslifeexpo.com. Okay, now it's February 9th through the 12th. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We have over 750 archive shows, 760. Custom apps, Apple, Android, all platforms, just $2 a month. And now, don't forget about becoming a Fadernaut. Go to our membership section on the site. Everything is right there. You get the bunker cam. You can even get commercial-free downloadable archives. You can get autographed T-shirts, hats, everything that you want and desire when you become a Fadernaut and become part of our family. All right, don't forget all of our sponsors, Life Change Tea, GetTheTea.com, River Moon Coffee, New Pharma, Ancient Life Oil, Sacred Skulls, and, of course, Numana Food Storage and Bearing Optics. Oh, you know, I was, did I mention this last week? Because I was thinking about it. Maybe I didn't, but Numana, if I was Numana, I'm going to speak to Numana. I would do a Thanksgiving dinner. That's what I would do. If I was Numana, I would have everything, look. The lights go out, electricity is out, it's an emergency, maybe there's flood, whatever, earthquake, and you're with the family, lights are out for a couple of days, and wouldn't it be cool if you could just turn to your kids, your wife, and go, you know what, tonight, it's turkey and all the trimmings, and you whip out some cranberry, some mashed potatoes, some green beans, and some turkey, and you're able to just do. I think they should do a turkey dinner. I really, really do. Numana Food Storage and also Bearing Optics Night Vision. Support us, support the show, change your life. Go and visit all of our sponsors. All right, let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, a very talented gentleman, Slash his frontman, Miles Kennedy, is 48 years old. And Miles has got some pipes. That's right. All right. Happy birthday, Miles. Our dead guys' birthdays today are Bruce Lee, 1940 1973, died at the age of 32. Best known for, Enter the Dragon, The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon. I watch them all the time. We have the DVD collection of all of the Bruce Lee stuff. We have it both in English and the original Chinese. I like the original Chinese. That's just me. I don't speak Chinese. Don't have to. Happy birthday, Bruce Lee. On July 20th, 1973, he complained of a headache and went to lie down for a nap. And then when he didn't come down for dinner, friends were unable to wake him up. They went up and checked on him. A doctor was called who spent 10 minutes attempting to revive Bruce before sending him by ambulance to a hospital. By the time he arrived, he had passed away. Happy birthday, Bruce. Also on this day, Jimi Hendrix, 1942 to 1970, died at the age of 27. Guitar god, whose 1967 album Are You Experienced won 7 Grammy Awards and is widely considered by myself and others to be one of the greatest rock albums of all time. And you think about it, right? Purple Haze, Hey Joe, Crosstown Traffic, Little Wing, right? The Wind Cries Mary. He changed the world. Seriously. Happy birthday, Jimmy. On this day in history, OTD 2005. You may not know about this, but check this out. Aerosmith and 50 Cent, not, 50, Aerosmith and 50 Cent headlined a $10 million bat mitzvah of Long Island 13-year-old Elizabeth Brooks. Seriously. Think about that for a second. Fader fact. In Wisconsin, this is a fact. In Wisconsin, the word people most often Google for how to spell is Wisconsin. And that is a Fader fact. All right. Tonight, Chance Gardner is here. He's director of the Magical Egypt series 1 and 2. He'll be with us here in a few short moments. He's actually in Australia, so it's going to be live from Australia. Tomorrow night, Alexis Brooks is here. Wednesday night, Riz Verk. Thursday night is another Fader night with John Rappaport. All right. Now, one of the things that is posted over on in our new news section, that's so cool to say new news, right? In our new news section is an article that has escaped the mass media over here in the United States, but we posted it, and apparently living bacteria has been found on the surface of the International Space Station, on the outside. Now, they might have extraterrestrial origins. Now, this is according to Russian cosmonaut Anton Shakpelrov, and he said that the microorganisms will be studied further on Earth. Say what? Now, what was that movie with Ryan Reynolds? Oh, man. On the ISS. Came out a couple of months ago. Rita and I just watched that. Very similar situation, because that was bacteria that was also found, I believe, on the outside of the ISS. They bring it on board, they grow it, and the next thing you know, everybody's being eaten alive. Now, Shkaplerev is an ISS expedition flight engineer who will take his third trip to the ISS in December as part of the Expedition 54 crew. He said that the scientists found the living bacteria while they were taking samples from the surface of the station Now, speaking to the Russian media outlet TASS, he said that the microorganisms might have come from outer space. Dum, dum, dum. Now, I'm quoting here. Bacteria that had not been there during the launch of the ISS module were found on swabs. So they have flew from somewhere in space and settled on the outside of the hull. Now, he said that some of the microorganisms have also appeared from Earth, and they survived in a vacuum and differences in temperature from minus 150 degrees to 150 degrees Celsius. These bacteria accidentally entered outer space during the test and Biorisk missions, in which special pads are installed on the ISS hull and left there for several years to determine how the material is affected by conditions in space. However, traces of bacteria originating on Earth from Madagascar and plankton from the Barents Sea were earlier found during a test experiment in May. Scientists explained then that they had got there due to the ionosphere lift phenomenon, in which substances from our planet's surface rise to the upper atmosphere, and now they are saying that they are going to change that level from 20 kilometers to now 400. Okay? Well, I get that. But let's back up here for a second. They are suggesting that they have taken bacteria from the outside of the hull of the space station of ISS and brought it back to Earth. They said that it's safe. How do you feel about that? I saw what happened to Ryan Reynolds in that movie. It was not pleasant, folks. Now, man, I'm not so sure about what's going on. But if it proves to be from space, it'll be the first aliens here officially on planet Earth. How cool is that? This is Faded Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, director of Magical Egypt, the series. Chance Gardner is here, live from Australia. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Totally bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back with our guest, Chance Gardner. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Tepe.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger-looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. It's Monday. Back in the chair, I am your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Chance at Magical Egypt. All the links are up there in Twitter right now. Welcome, everybody. Chance Gardner is a multi-award winning graphic designer. He's a 3D animator, cinematographer, and editor. Now, after a 20-year career producing motion picture graphics and on-air promotions for major TV networks, including 20th Century Fox, Paramount Studios, NBC, Universal, he retired from television in 2001 to make documentaries. His first documentary, Magical Egypt, became a cult classic and is still in wide circulation around the world. Now, after 15 years, Gardner has returned to the Magical Egypt project to produce the much-anticipated Magical Egypt Series 2, which features everybody from the original Magical Egypt, plus a new generation of researchers and unorthodox thinkers, all united by a common fascination with the unexplained mysteries of the past. Tonight, we're going to talk about the making of Magical Egypt 1 and 2, lost history, civilizations, art, symbolism, and what makes Egypt the most important piece of the puzzle that is still lost. And I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, live from Australia, by the way, Chance Gardner. Chance, good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
Hey, Jimmy. Thank you.
What time is it there?
Good God, 1:34 p.m.
So you're fresh. You're good.
I'm fresh, and I'm all full of myself after hearing that introduction. That made me sound way more interesting than I really am.
Well, you know what's interesting here is when we have somebody from Europe. Because we're like, it's always like 4:30 in the morning, and we have to drag them out of bed. But you're ready to go, and that's why I love. But this is the thing: you are a day ahead, so you actually can tell us the future.
Yeah, watch out for that tidal wave.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well played. Well played. Well, you're a first-time guest, so you get the first-time guest disclaimer. The next time you're on the show, you don't get it. But you get the first-time guest disclaimer tonight, which is this. It's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we are going to end as friends. There you go.
Awesome.
Are you ready?
I love that. I'm ready.
All right. Now, this is the deal, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier today, but the first time that I watched, maybe it was the trailer of Magical Egypt 1, and I'm like, I'm getting all tensed up. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be good stuff. And then Jaws, John Anthony West turns and looks into the camera and just gives this glare. I was like, holy crap, this is going to be good. and it was a game changer. But did you expect the game changing things that happened with Magical Egypt? And as a director and editor, you hope for things, but did you think that all of this was going to happen?
Well, the show was universally hated when we first did it. The networks wouldn't have anything to do with it. And it seemed at the time like it was a giant face flop. But I'd always known, John's such a special character and this subject is so magnetic. And the project was always this sort of pet project for me. So I would never listen to anybody. And I didn't follow any of the rules of traditional television. And I was working at Fox at the time when it started. And this brand new thing had happened. Cops. It's nothing remarkable nowadays, but it was a kind of a paradigm changer because it was the first time you saw a TV show that wasn't using tripods and the cameramen were just sort of running around after cops and criminals, and it gave it this alive and frenetic kind of feeling, and it gave you this sense of involvement. And I also, growing up, I think you and I are about the same age, and a big part of our lives was this explosion of punk rock music where all of a sudden the musicians and artists stopped paying attention to the old rules. And it was just startling that, something could come along that had such a disregard for the old institutions. And so there was just so much about Magical Egypt that wasn't concerned about orthodox forms. And, the other thing that I think we talked about briefly, at the time when Magical Egypt came out, it was just the de facto formula that whatever odd or unusual idea that you'd put forward, you have to have some pedantic, angry person to rebut it. You had to have both sides represented. And that was the first thing that I decided I wasn't interested in, because the people that, line up to debunk this, which is most people, a lot of people out there consider themselves armchair experts about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'd realized that I hated what that did for momentum. And a huge part of Magical Egypt, and the thing I think that gave it its magnetism and its resonance, was I am, and I assume you are, and I know a lot of people out there, have this idea, have this understanding. If you just look at Egypt, it tells you this thing about itself. And then you go to authorities and say, wow, I just saw this cool thing. And the authorities were all going, no, you didn't. You didn't see that. That's not there. And so for myself and for everybody like me, I just wanted to do something that validates those people that were smart enough to observe the riddle that Egypt presents. And so, and as it turns out, that was one of those things, an idea whose time has come. And speaking of tidal waves, that I think we're firmly in the aftermath of that radical shift in, collective belief about our past.
The other thing, and we're going to get into this heavily tonight, is the especially with Series 1. Series 2 takes graphics and technology to another level. But going back to 2001, you framed and shot this with an artistic side that was just absolutely amazing. And that had never been done before when it came to Egypt. It was always an afterthought, and it wasn't presented that way. Was that done with intention?
It was sort of a byproduct. When I worked at Fox in on-air promo for a long time, and I had these fantastically competent teams, some of the best people in television. Cameramen would go out and shoot, and because my core education was in graphic design, and especially because I'm just fanatical about divine proportions and the magic of geometry, I had these ideas about composition. And rather than trying to work through cameramen, it was way easier for me to learn how to use a camera than to teach a cameraman about sacred geometry and the laws of composition. So it was part of what made this such a weird animal, that because I've been doing promos for so long and I had to shoot a little bit and I had to do some editing, and I've been doing graphics all my life. So that was actually the easiest part of it. But even in this last series, I've written all the music for the soundtrack and stuff. And it was another little thing that it just became my secret garden where I got to do whatever I wanted. And that doing everything myself gave it an unusual look. I'm not saying it's a good look. I wouldn't recommend anybody else do that, but it certainly gave it a character that's much more design forward, it makes me happy. It's like flavoring your food. All the information in the world sometimes information is made better with aesthetics. Everything's made better with the right aesthetics.
Well, that's right. And Egypt was always shot almost in 2D before.
Yeah.
It didn't have that thing to it that you see when you're there in person. And then here comes Magical Egypt, where everything is shot with shadow and vibrant colors and angles and this high-def kind of vibe that was going on there that was just ignored in the past. But here we have these, like I said, that's a good analysis, the punk rock side of it, where this had an edge that has never been presented before. Did that turn people off, or do you think that it ended up giving it legs, to have that kind of edge?
The networks hated it. For the first 5 years that I did it, I got nothing but beaten on the head and neck with sticks from the production industry is a very catty industry, and everybody's an expert on what you've done wrong. But just like fashion or any kind of thing that is an aesthetic expression, the only time paradigms come about is if one person does something without regard for what's come before. Not that I'm, any great vanguard or anything. A lot of the stuff in Egypt, Magical Egypt, came about because of just basic laziness and practicality. But it ended up being this animal all on its own. And I've always approached this as an aesthetic offering. And, the best thing an artist can do is to find the right medium or the right subject or the right message. And the difference between timeless art and art that hangs on the wall at a Motel 6 is this timeless message. If you choose something to immortalize in your art, you're only as good as the subject you immortalize. And so all I had to do was stay out of the way and let Egypt talk to you through its geometry. I'm a big fan of graphic novels, and there's a kind of exaggerated perspective that you see in comic books that is really hard to get on camera. But if you know that's what you're looking for and you buy the right wide angle lenses and really surf those vanishing points, and that's really the secret to it. I love the exaggerated reality that you get in certain comic book illustration styles, and so I've tried to do that in the compositions and the camera angles and stuff.
It's very cool. It's very
awesome.
Cool. And for those out there that don't even know about storyboarding or comic book art or that kind of thing, that fine, but they're going to watch it and go, man, this is a little bit different. Right. So
there's different states of consciousness. I didn't learn this until much later. I did a lot of stuff accidentally at the beginning, but if you've ever been like sitting there minding your own business and then somebody walks up behind you and punches you in the head, you actually see differently in moments of crisis and the different states of consciousness. Your vision is actually different. And there's this kind of heightened state that, I don't know if you read Terence McKenna, but Terence McKenna used to talk about archaic men eating mushrooms and it would heighten their senses and make them a better hunter, give you more acuity and hearing so you knew where your prey was. And there's these non-standard states of consciousness that have a very kind of at the same time recognizable and hard to recognize. I mean, it's familiar. It's not anyway, it's the state of consciousness that there's a way that you see things in different states of consciousness. And a lot of what I tried to do sort of subliminally in the show is induce this non-standard state of consciousness, which is what Egypt does. Egypt really, we can get into this more later, but there's a kind of right polarity, right brain hemisphere of consciousness that's aesthetic. And then there's a left brain hemisphere of consciousness that's more hierarchical and linear. And art itself, and especially in Egypt, it prompts you to think in this other way. Like, when you stare at a mandala, the Indian mandalas are actually this technology that changes your brain state. And if you look at a properly constructed mandala for more than 2 minutes, like when you're under an EKG, it'll actually change your hemisphere of dominance from right to left. And so music has always been an obvious one. Art is a real strong one. And television is really this technology for the manipulation of consciousness. If an artist is using it, when you're firing on all syllables and really using art to its full capacity, and having been in the advertising world and in the television world for so long, most of what we see that masquerades as art is art's slutty sister, advertising, and some of the best artists have been conscripted by advertising. And there's just this imperative to stay in the missionary position in advertising. And when you realize that's not what art's about, art's there to amplify your experience and to literally, just change your brain waves and shift you from a pedantic state of consciousness to a more magical state of consciousness, a more vibrant, active animal state of consciousness, or, just that state of consciousness where epiphanies and genius come from. I've tried to do that in the show, and only as a way of paying homage to Egypt. Like when you're there in Egypt, that's what the point of this art is to change your way of thinking and evolve you out of this kind of pedantic mode of thinking to a more magical state of thinking that's in resonance with what the people were thinking like when this stuff was created.
Well, you do a really effective job in 2. We're going to go back to 1 briefly, well, a lot, but you do a really effective job in 2 for art history, especially in episode 1, where you lay the groundwork, because these get to be pretty complex issues when you're dealing with symbolism and the attention of the ancients, and also in modern art too. So you do a really, really effective job for Art History 101 and what is to be expected in all of the upcoming episodes. Why did you choose to do that? You could have bypassed that and just went straight to the meat.
It probably would have been a lot more commercially successful. A big rule when you're undergoing a documentary is it better be something that really thrills you and that you really fluoresce to, and that you have this sort of emotional or spiritual imperative for. And for me, being an artist, and because Egypt was so transformative for me as an artist, I'd be standing there in Egypt and in between shoots, and you're just standing there, you're waiting for somebody to return from the bathroom or something, and you're just like there in the middle of a temple, and you'll turn and look, and this thing all of a sudden is standing next to you, and it just screams at you.
Right.
And it has this presence that is just, it grabs you, it engages you, and it makes you start doing things, and it starts doing things to you. And in addition to this primal effect it has on you, when you start studying the art, it was so transformative for me. So at the beginning of the project, I thought if I could do nothing except shine a light on the artistic techniques and thinking of Egypt, it would be such a boom to the artists in the world that, just through changing our aesthetic and placing more emphasis on the aesthetic, the world would be a much better place.
Now, take me back. We're going to head towards a break here in a few minutes. Did you have an interest in Egypt? Well, you did before, but what brought all of this on? Did it start in childhood?
Yeah, oddly enough, my parents used to, I'll try and answer this really quickly. We lived way out in the country when I was young, and my parents would work until 5, and my school got out at 3, so it was in this little town, and there was literally nothing in town except this giant old Gothic library. And so I would walk down to the library, and I'd read a lot of sci-fi and a lot of, horror stuff, but I found the art section. I was young, a youngster, before I had any reason to suspect that I would do this for a living. And I found this art section, and there was 2 books that I couldn't put down. One was Salvador Dali and his collection, and the other one was this giant picture book of ancient Egypt. And so the minute I saw it, I was breathtaking, and I couldn't stop looking. It turned out to be a Zahi Hawass book, so a lot of the commentary wasn't,
Right.
That's the last name I'm going to call out. Remind me not to do that. I don't want to mention anybody.
Not a problem.
Anyway, and so early on, it attracted me. And then way before I met John, I was doing video games. I was doing the graphics for environments of video games. You run around in environments and shoot things and stuff. And I won this big contract, and we were trying to think up, what's not been done to death? What kind of video game can we make that's really cool? And it hit me that I'd like to do virtual environments from Egypt, from ancient Egypt, and, set the game in that, because the art direction would be so cool. And so I went to the library and just, unloaded all the books I could find about Egypt and got all this source material and stuff. And as I'm working on the graphics and I'm, recreating these things in 3D, I had to go back and find all these original blueprints and stuff from the temples. And as I'm going through all this stuff, one of the books I grabbed from the library was this ratty old paperback with this cool illustration on it done by some character named John Anthony West. It was this book called Serpent in the Sky. And I remember just this night, I was late. I had a deadline the next day, and I was just under incredible pressure. But I ended up being so stuck into this book of John Anthony West, I think I missed my deadline and just sat there and read this book for the next 3 days. And that's what really radicalized me about all of this. It lit a fire in me because, as you know, as most people know, if you asked about the mysteries of Egypt 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you hear this one monolithic answer that presents itself as the only possible answer. And it has really very little to do with what you can directly observe about Egypt. So anyway, I really caught this bug. And when I was working on this video game, I became obsessed, if obsessed is kind of a weird word, but I really did become obsessed with John West. And then years later, just weirdly, I was working at Fox, and we were working on this terrible show called Opening the Lost Tombs, live from Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
And Zahi was on it, and Graham was on it, and Robert Bivall was on it, who I get a huge kick out of, and John was on it. And I'm like, oh my God, there's that guy I'm obsessed with. And so I somehow got a hold of his personal information and called him up and just, wanted to say thanks for the work. And we ended up chatting, and he said, if you want to walk the walk, I'm leaving tomorrow, or that was like 48 hours from now. I'm leaving for Egypt. You should come with me. And it was at that place where I was really sick of my job, and I was starting to burn out. Well, I was way past burning out. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. So I went down and bought a ticket for the next day, and I left for Egypt and kind of went into retirement at that point, and went over to Egypt. And like John was my Grateful Dead, I just started following him around and filming him and stuff. And I really didn't even know if anything would come of it, but that's where Magical Egypt started, and that's how I got sucked into it.
Now, so is that when you shot all of those the stuff at the Cairo Museum? Was that done on that trip?
Yeah.
Now
it was a 5-year period where I went a lot. I mean, I'd spent a lot of time over there. And so I don't really know what things were shot where, but in that cluster of filming, because I remember I wasn't even using good equipment. I had this crappy little 3-chip camera that, you could literally hide in the palm of your hand. And it was all you have to be very casual when you're over there because they're so quick to, try and extract money from you if you look professional. So it was all very casual. I had some basic audio equipment and this just really crappy camera. And so we were able to sneak into a lot of places that you weren't allowed to film. And I guess you can't film at all in the Cairo Museum now, which is awful because there's really no point. Well, anyway. And so I've got some just magical moments. And because it was unscripted, and because, as you know, John's such a fantastic speaker, and he's just such a great mind that I just knew if I followed this guy around and kept the camera running, because I really, until John explains it to you, or until you spend years and years and years studying it, you really don't. Orthodox Egyptology doesn't really call your attention to the things that are, in my opinion, the most interesting, because there's all of these things that seem to disprove the rule. And Cairo Museum is this incredible collection of things that, to this day, nobody can explain a lot of the stuff that's there.
Yeah, there's one shot. I don't want to dwell on this too much. Everybody should just go and watch Magical Egypt 1. But there's one shot where John is pointing out in this display case the vases, right in a row. Yeah. And at that moment, it kind of hits you. At that moment, it's not the pyramids, right? It's not Luxor. It's not Dendera, right? It's not any of that. It's those vases in that display case that tell you things are not what they are telling us, right?
There's this quiet little thing that just comes bubbling up in your head because nobody will say it, but there are some of the hardest stone on earth, schist, and I forget the names of some of them now, but there's things that are way harder than diamonds. And there's these beautiful, intricate, crafted things, bowls and vases, and there's just no way that you can find a tool that would craft this stuff. And there's also the thing that I used as the cover face for the original Magical Egypt series is this really sort of unassuming, it's not very big, it's about as big as your hand, it's this face that's just there among everything else, collecting dust and spiders in the Cairo Museum. And when you look at it, and then John says, by the way, that's obsidian. That is an obsidian face. And if you know anything about obsidian chips and flakes and stuff, there's literally no way to sculpt obsidian unless you can generate a heat that's hot enough to melt it. And once you start thinking along the lines of what if they could generate a heat that was hot enough to melt stone, then all of a sudden these things become not quite so mysterious. But the other thing that's impressive about a lot of those things, the bowls and the vases and stuff, those things could last 100,000 years. And there's no real indication that those were even there in Egypt, but that one of the thrilling things about Egypt is there's stuff that was ancient when the Egyptians were there. And they talk about it all the time, but it's one of those things that Orthodoxy doesn't like to bring up, that and what John was so important for, and Graham and Robert and all the people that came after, were pointing out that there was clearly something there way before what we think of as dynastic Egypt. And so the Cairo Museum is one of those places where the stuff's just out there and they don't feel particularly burdened to tell you anything about it. But you go through the Cairo Museum with John, or take Magical Egypt with you and watch it as you go through the thing. And you come across all these things that are just literally inexplicable, and that to me is part of the fun of Egypt, and what makes the whole thing so punk rock, because the principal says one thing and the kids are saying something else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, briefly, and I definitely want to talk about the basement of the Cairo Museum, but we've got about a minute and a half here. The list is long, but give me the thing at the top of the list that you walked away from on that first trip to Egypt with John Anthony West. There is one thing that just was an epiphany. What was it?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think for me it was that there was an intelligence and a sophistication of science that we've been completely misled about. And the most important thing is that everyone tends to push this conversation into a speculative or theoretical mode where this stuff was operative. This wasn't just expressing ideas. This was stuff that was addressed to you, and it tells you about you. And it's not stuff to think about. It's stuff that you do. And so when I realized that the artwork was transmitting these ancient instructions for something, that's when it got really exciting for me, because it's like telling me things about myself that I didn't know. And it's telling me how to achieve these things that I had no reason to expect even existed. And that's when I really got hooked.
Yeah, John, over the years, has driven one thing home with me. As a matter of fact, we spent a few hours one day sitting next to each other in the hot sun out in the desert. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and he's like, Church, yes, you're right. But it's not about that. It's about the symbolism. And I would go, yeah, but this and that, the tons of the right. Jimmy, it's the symbolism, man.
Yep.
And I didn't, it takes a while to get through the weight of the stones, or how they carved it, or the quarrying, or the moving, and the giant statues, and the weight, and the size, and the antiquity. Yes, it's all there. But that's the logistical side. That's the technical side. It's the symbolism that is the message. And it takes a minute, but once you do, that's all you see after that.
It's like a magic book, and everyone wants to focus on the binding and the size of the paper, and that's a 10-pound bond that's paper. But it's not that. That's there to present you a story, and when you start looking past the pages at the story, then Egypt comes alive.
Yeah, I can't help now. He's ruined it for me. Let's take a break right here, Chance. This is Fade to Black, live from Australia. Chance Gardner, director, art director, writer, creator, Magical Egypt 1 and 2. Is our guest. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Chance at Magical Egypt. We'll be right back.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas. Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy.
You're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell,
You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go Beckley Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. It's Monday, the Monday edition. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Chance Gardner is here, director, Magical Egypt 1 and 2. And where I would like to go now, Chance, you blew by this rather quickly, so I'm going to go back. We got to back the truck up here. You said that you wrote the music. Now, I'm a guitar player. And I
saw you. I saw a picture of you with a Stevie Ray Vaughan copy. I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good too. But anyway, you've got some pretty cool riffage that goes on in this. Who played that guitar?
Me. That's all me.
Man, dude, you got some talent.
It's the Gretsch. I have this Gretsch. Venice bought me a Gretsch a long time ago, and the thing just does what it's going to do. It's like those stories of magical swords that make you go out and kill people because the sword's hungry for blood. That guitar, it's a 1990 Brian Setzer hot rod, and it makes me do things. I'm just channeling.
It's got that Gretsch Bigsby on it, right?
Yeah, right. The Bigsby and that Dwayne Eddy twang. It just sounds like it's 100 stories tall.
Yeah, man. It's legit. So don't think I didn't notice that.
Good on you. Almost nobody picks that up. That was so much harder than anything else about the show, to sit down and be disciplined enough. And you should never be your own engineer, you know. And
you know what? You know what I really dig? The licks are really good, but the hi-hat, just right at the right. You know what I'm talking about. Well done. Okay, so that's you.
I've heard you talking about David Lynch in some of your interviews, and I'm such a nut for David Lynch and that cool secret agent vibe that he creates with snaps and that hi-hat with a lot of reverb on it. I just blatantly stole that. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Well, we tried to get Lynch on the show last month. And
can you imagine?
Well, his response back, you know what it was?
Oh.
I'm involved with my art right now.
Awesome.
I was like, okay, cool. Well, moving on. Now let's jump into. Let's go from 1 to series 2.
All right.
There is a very interesting, and again, you're ruining it for me aesthetically now because now I just see things differently. It's very effective. But the presentation that you do with the pineal gland, the eye of Horus, the brain, the symmetry, and the way that it is presented, and you do a little thing with Michelangelo too as well. Now let's talk about that for a second, because that is a game-changing segment for not only the series but for the world in general. Because if people accept that and start to look at the world around them and art, not only through the Renaissance, but going back to 2500 BC, this is a very serious thing where they had much more intelligence of a technical sense than we give everybody credit for.
Yeah. It's so easy to get upset to focus on the technical execution, which is amazing and worthy of attention and reverence. But using it the way they do to communicate this incredibly sophisticated and accurate is the weirdest thing. These bits of brain architecture. For people that haven't seen it, there's the kind of other two people that were the seeds of the show were these two remarkable researchers, Brad Clausen and Gary Osborne. And Brad Clausen, I always call him the young Brad Clausen, and he just pointed out that he's my age and he's not young. But anyway, so the venerable middle-aged Brad Clausen started finding these really sophisticated depictions of brain architecture in some of the oldest art in the world. And if you're an artist, you're kind of aware of these things. Meshberger and some people back in the, I think it was like 70s or 80s, first noticed that Michelangelo painting was a perfect depiction of brain architecture. And not only because it's not that hard to cut somebody's head in half and just sort of draw what you see. But what's interesting is that you have brain parts associated with symbolism that show you here's what this part of the brain does. And they did not know things like that back in Michelangelo's day, and they shouldn't have known it in ancient Egypt. But it's only now that science has taken us to a place where we have a pretty, good working understanding of what brain parts do what. And so now you go back and look at this art and you realize that it's right there in front of you, kind of rubbing your nose in the fact that somebody, and that's a whole, sinkhole, who was that somebody? But at some point, this information, this incredibly sophisticated brain science was there. It was somehow associated with theology and psychology. It's why I love that ancient art so much, is back when art was used the way it was supposed to, was didactic art that actually teaches you something. There's some incredibly complicated science. So just the fact that the brain was so perfectly depicted and they indicated what different brain parts did was amazing in ancient Egypt. But then Brad Clausen, this is in episode 2, Brad shows this type or this sort of genre of statue that goes back through Sumerian with Ishtar and Inanna and Diana later, Ishtar, Inanna, that is the brainstem. And all of these things that art critics throughout the ages have been, doing these contortions, trying to explain, here's all these ways where she's not anatomically correct. If you compare these statues to a woman, like everyone says they're fertility statues, and in some sense they could be, but what they really are is this fantastic depiction of the brainstem and the things that don't belong. It's not like they thought women had 1,000 breasts back then, or that a woman's shoulders should be really big. It's just that through the overt symbolism of a woman and fertility, they encode, that word encode, like a cipher. You've encoded this science into the aesthetic. It's amazing because it changes history. It's amazing because it's, in my opinion, it's the highest use to which art has ever been put. It really shakes up and reorganizes the art world, but all by himself. When Brad showed that the Venus of Willendorf and those really old primitive statues were that same thing, and all the articulations in the body are the exact articulations of the brainstem. And it just, I don't know what to make of it. Like you said earlier when we spoke, there's some times where you almost feel afraid because you read something that's so controversial and so disruptive, so counterculture, and you're like, wow, I feel like I could get in trouble for this. Or I kind of thought, wow, Brad's going to get assassinated or something. Like note to self, don't stand next to Brad in any open markets or public places, because this guy's going to be assassinated for being too disruptive. Anyway, that's just a joke, but I really did get that feeling.
No, that is not a joke. But you just said that he was our age. Dude doesn't have a wrinkle on his face.
I know. That's why it's entirely from jealousy and maliciousness that I call him young Brad Clausen, because he looks like he's a vibrant 30-year-old.
Yeah, he does. No, tell everybody who Brad is. He's one of the most badass artists on the planet.
Oh my God, yeah. So you never know this if you just talk to him, because he's such a humble fellow. But I think he's listening right now. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Brad.
But he was the in-house illustrator for Pearl Jam, and a lot of the posters, and I believe some of the album covers were his. But he was so famous for his work with the Pearl Jam rock and roll posters that he's a very widespread and widely recognized concert poster guy. And I've never been good with my bare hands and painting and stuff like that. And Brad's like, he'll sit down and it takes him a month to do these illustrations, but they're like, I don't know if you saw that documentary about R. Crumb, the old.
Oh yeah. That's a great documentary, by the way.
Wasn't it? That was a David Lynch. Anyway, Brad does that style, that hyper detailed style that I used to be able to work that way when I was doing video games, because environments you could really stop and explore and appreciate all the detail. But then in television, you can't. You got a second to make your impression, so you really have to pare down. So I really love Brad's work because it's using art in the old way where you can really pull up a chair and spend some time with this art. You can spend an hour and not notice some of the great stuff. Plus, part of the reason why we resonate so well is he's a nut for ancient Egypt like I am, and he really wields those powerful old symbols in a way that, it's just like a whip or a scourge. It reaches right out of the poster and scars your flesh.
Yeah, the other thing is because he's so good. I mean, he as far as an artist goes, but once you start to see things as an artist, I went to art school and I did all of these things too. And once you grab onto something, you cannot help but see it everywhere. That's just part of being an artist. For him, I can almost see being driven to the edge of insanity. Because you're seeing this symbolism now in everything, and then he takes it to another level.
Yeah. There's this amazing thing that we joke amongst ourselves about that, you can literally dislocate your shoulder from patting yourself on the back every time you make a discovery. And it's like, wow, my God, I can't believe I just found this. I solved this puzzle, and here's the prize, and it's this epiphany. And then you go outside and you look at any Masonic hall or, architecture or all of these things that happen later, and you realize I'm not the first person to realize this, and that this has been out in front of us for as long as people have been around, as long as there's been cities and as long as stones have been hewn into smooth ashlars, and that somebody's known this stuff, and it's been expressed through different mediums. Sometimes it was William Blake and poetry, sometimes it's Jimmy Page and rock and roll, sometimes it's the old Gothic architects. But once you understand some of the answers to these age-old riddles, after that thrill of triumph of solving the puzzle fades, you go outside and you're like, well, clearly I'm not the first person to have solved this puzzle.
Well, and okay, now let's stay right here with this, because not only Brad talks about this, but you start off with the door. And I think it was Young that said, I found a door, man, and I stepped through it. And here it is, part of symbolist Egypt, and these temples and the doorway to the mind, and also its symmetry, the left and right, and everything else that today we study, but it was clearly presented in Egypt 2,600, 3,000 years ago. When you made this discovery, with all of you, the team, how did that make you feel, and where did you go next with it?
For me personally, the pylon discovery, that I don't know if you know John West's work. John, his first big contribution to humanity was that he translated this book of Schwaller de Lubec's, and Schwaller de Lubec's was a remarkable man that we could talk about at length. But he was the first to discover things like, if you look at the Luxor temple from the top down, the architecture creates this template. And if you put a person on that template, then the architecture points to important parts of the person. As far as I know, Schwaller never discovered this pylon thing. And that was, as far as I know, that was a discovery that I'd made that I'd never heard anybody else say. And so I was hugely excited about that. That's what made me go out and start researching and come across Brad and Gary, who had found the same example in other instances, that there was this biometric information that had to do with consciousness, and it was hidden or encoded in art. And so when you look at the pylon from the front and then superimpose that over a human brain, I don't know if people know that classic Egyptian pylon, but it's a very distinct piece of architecture. If you watch Stargate or just about anything, or just look at footage from Egypt, the classic Egyptian temple pylon means the front of the entry to the temple. It's these two humps, and significantly the humps don't touch, but they have this bridging architecture where the door is. And on the top of the door, there's this winged disc that's a very iconic part of Egyptian architecture. So if you take that pylon and superimpose it over the human brain, the two humps perfectly outline where the brain is. And there's all these strange bits of architectural features. The ventricle, the third ventricle that goes through the brain, is that exact same curve that's at the top of the door. And nothing was accidental and nothing is there for ornamentation. Every single thing in that facade is a piece of information that tells you about the structure of the brain. What I found was more interesting than that, though. It isn't just about brain structure. It calls your attention to the parts of the brain that produce consciousness, that play a role in producing consciousness. And ultimately, when we kind of started getting past the superficial stuff and getting to the answers to some of these old riddles, this art is transmitting an ancient science, but it's not a science that we think about. Or it's not a science in the sense that we think of it. It's a science that instead of being externally oriented and oriented towards the material world, it's a science that focuses on this inner universe of consciousness, which is way more mysterious. And as I'm sure you know, neurologists and people still don't know what consciousness is to this day. And so here's this old science that says, oh yeah, here's what it is. And here's a schematic of your consciousness. And here's the major components. Here's minor components. And so another thing that I think was kind of unique to that was, I haven't really heard anybody else say, was just like those two pylons, or just the two humps in the pylon are connected by a door, there's all kinds of statuary that show Horus and Set standing on both sides of the pharaoh, and their hands are literally pointing to his left and right hemisphere. And that's when it really broke through for me, this overall idea that finally made me feel like I could birth this new magical Egypt, was that what we're seeing here are these schematics, but they're not just schematics of the meat body, they're schematics of consciousness. So imagine that all that crazy nonsense, all that stuff in your head, all your psyche is like architecture, and you inherit this house, and you only live on the bottom floor. And then one day you find this blueprint and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize there's like 3 more floors on this house that I've never explored. And suddenly you find this door and you realize you've been living in the basement and your house has these, extra floors, and the rooftop is fantastic. And there's a pool and a jacuzzi you didn't know about. And so by finding these schematics that nobody ever told you about, you learn these things about yourself. But the most important thing you learn is there's a door in your head that no one told you about. And if you can find that door and walk through it, that's not an end in itself, but that leads you out of the basement to these higher floors. You can see this in a lot of Masonic art, that tracing board that's a 4-story structure. That's a schematic of consciousness. And the Masons, as you probably know, are notable and admirable and amazing for their role as the custodian of these ancient old ideas. And there are some things even that Masonry has forgot, like, they revere and they keep alive, but they don't know what it means. And so what I find thrilling about this and what's so compelling about this is that in the art are the secrets to a lot of things that were lost, but they represent this science that is of inestimable importance, because who wouldn't benefit from understanding, if you got a car and you never bothered looking at the owner's manual, and this car, without you knowing, was actually a anti-gravity, it flew and it traveled back and forth in time, but you didn't know because you never looked at the owner's manual. And so this art is telling you about yourself. It produces, and not just art, but statuary and architecture as well. They're these schematics that show you this part of yourself that you can't look at directly. And it's sort of that, that old thing, you can't tell about a watch from inside the watch. This is a view of you from outside the closed watch. And that's exciting to me. And that was kind of the basis of all the later occult traditions and esoteric traditions that are just the absolute anathema to science and to academia. It's a big part of the show. In fact, our tagline of the show is where science refuses to go and where religion forbids us to look, the artist takes over as the rightful tour guide. And so if you show up with this stuff without any baggage or without these things that you can and can't talk about, like Egyptology has this dogma, and they just will not go outside that dogma. But artists show up, and artists have this liberty to explore things as they are. And I don't care what it is. I'm just going to go with what the information is. And that, I think, is another thing that makes Egypt so attractive and so timeless for people, because people sense in some unconscious sense that there's something here that's of direct benefit for me. And it's not just something I think about. It's something that you do.
Did you mentioned Zahi? Was he around when he shot the first series?
Yeah, I've constantly had to meet with him, and I can't really. There's a lot of things that you're not supposed to do in Egypt that you just have to kind of do.
Right.
And you either get arrested or you don't get arrested. But without mentioning any certain people, there seems to be this force that presents itself as a custodian of ancient Egypt, but in fact, it's more like a gatekeeper. And recently, when that team use those photon scans, and it looks like they found the space in the pyramid way before you can make any conclusions based on the data. These certain entities were out there already saying, nope, that's not true. That's not true. Nothing to see here, folks.
Right.
You know that old thing? You
Right.
don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Nothing to see here, folks. And so every time I've been in Egypt and throughout this process, and John's life has been much more impacted by this than me, that there's this constant vigilant force that seems to be dedicated to us not knowing the coolest things about Egypt. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand that. And I kind of have taken it upon myself to be the counterforce for that.
Did he review anything?
No.
So you got away with that.
Yeah, I probably won't next time I go.
Well,
Egyptian jail.
Yeah, I heard that he's trying to push his way back into things over there. Let's hope it doesn't happen. But did you?
If you want to hear a hilarious conversation about Zahi, like I don't like to get in fights and stuff, but if you're a person who has a sadistic streak and you like to hear really smart people fight with one another, Robert Bivol has this really public, ongoing feud with Zahi, and it is just hilarious to hear the two of them go at it because there's a lot of things that are just you can't hide behind, and there's a lot of things that are unforgivable, and the demand and the imperative that this information that literally could change humanity if someone were just honest about it. Why would you want to be the guy that prevents the world from knowing about this stuff? I just don't understand it.
Are you outside on your patio?
Yeah, are you hearing wind noise?
Yep. I'm picturing you in the nice, beautiful Brisbane day.
Oh, you ought to see it. We live on a volcano, and there's sugar fields all around us, and you can see the ocean in the distance. That door there, sweetie, close that door. So it is amazing. It's very alive here. We talked briefly about this. Everything in Australia is constantly trying to kill you. There's just everything poisonous and riptides and spiders and snakes, and you're just like 4 or 5% more alive because you could die at any moment. And the land here is like coming from Los Angeles, where everything was all paved over and everything's dead.
Right.
You don't remember what it was like to bugs and birds, and just there's not a square inch here that isn't wiggling around with something. And it is beautiful, as you mentioned, and the society is just as beautiful. There's 1/10 as many people as in the States, so everyone's a character and everyone's larger than life, and it's just an awesome place.
Yeah, coming from LA, where the oldest thing we have here is In-N-Out Burger. Right.
Yeah. The oldest thing in LA is the lead-based paint that's on all the walls and all the houses.
I swear. Now, this is what I wanted to ask you. Going around Egypt and filming all of these temples and everything, and then you come back to Giza, does it match to you? Does Giza feel like it's older? I mean, or the same age as some of these other temples from the early dynastic period, or does it seem completely mismatched and like extremely old?
Well, that's the $1 million question about Egypt. Is there's 3 places that are dead giveaways that there was something really interesting there going on before Egypt. And if you study the art and if you study architecture, there's these really 3. There's millions, but there's 3 really prominent instances where clearly these weren't made by the same people and the same architectural and aesthetic ideas. So one is the Osirion.
Right. Right.
One is the pyramid, and then right next to the pyramid, the Valley Temple. So the pyramid, the Osirion and the Valley Temple are made in this post and lentil structure like you see in Stonehenge, and there's no hieroglyphs. There's no hieroglyphs on them. You still incidentally find the sacred geometry, and you find that ability to work with incredibly difficult materials, but it looks like Stonehenge. It's just a completely much more brutish and more kind of alien. I've always been a fan of science fiction artwork, and there's some illustrators that do things with alien architecture that it just looks like people didn't do it. And then the pyramid is one of my favorite scratching posts about this subject because the pyramid was not made for human architecture. Like if you were a velociraptor or something, that if your hips were different and you walked like a velociraptor, the pyramid would be quite a comfortable place. I'm not saying that I think dinosaurs built the pyramids, but it's clearly not made for people. And it was made for something that, Robert Bivol, of course, is very interesting about riffing on what the pyramid might have been built for. And there's for every person out there, there's a different idea about what the pyramids were for. But I'm not an expert on that. What I am an expert on is aesthetics and the functionality of structure, and this thing was not built for people. And all those little things, they've never found, these are all other people's arguments, but there's no hieroglyphs inside, and there's no, there's this giant tomb, but they never really pulled a body out. The tomb apparently in the pyramid, by the way, is not where it's supposed to be. That's something not many people know. Like, what would the pyramid do if that tomb was right in the middle of the room like it's supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
And so the other thing that I was interested in, just being kind of an amateur musician, is that acoustic engineers, the pyramid was built so that the rooms have these resonant proportions. So if you're standing in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, it's surfaced with this rose quartz crystal. And the rose quartz is unique for having these piezoelectric crystals, which is what makes an electric guitar work, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it converts sound. It converts. It's like a digital to analog converter, only it converts, I think, sound to vibration or vibration to light or something. Anyway, the reason an electric guitar works is the vibration of the strings go through a piezoelectric crystal that turns it into these minuscule electronic signals. And so when you go into the King's Pyramid and you start making noise, something happens where you literally can't understand yourself if you talk in a regular speaking voice. It starts feeding back. And so you have to whisper. This really weird if you want to communicate at all. And if you go in there specifically trying to research this, you can do this thing in the rooms where you walk into a room and you go, and all the way up, and there'll be a certain frequency that's the resonant frequency of the room. And if you hit that and you just keep doing that, and it feeds back on you, and you literally make your molecules start vibrating. And there's something there that's way beyond me, but there was a technology there that involved the human voice in some way, and I'm fascinated by that. And you know how so much of the later, occult traditions and religious traditions had to do with vocalizing and intoning and chanting and stuff. So I can't say that I know specifically what it is, but it seems to be involved in a technology that hasn't been around in a long time.
And the Egyptologists will say, it just happened that way. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
It just didn't.
If you understand the golden section and sacred proportions, there are these certain things, and it's very easy to say, it's just accidental that it turned out that way, but to get an exact golden ratio, and the King's Pyramid is a three-dimensional golden ratio, so the rectangle of the floor is a golden ratio, but then the height and the volume is this exact multiple of the human voice. So if your vocal wavelength for a man is, say, at a certain note is 20 feet, then if you're standing exactly 20 feet away from something, or if you're in the middle of a room that's 40 feet wide, you start chanting, and then you get this perfect feedback where the wave going to the wall is the same as the wave coming back. And it is the freakiest thing you have ever experienced if you've ever been in the middle of one of those feedback things. But it's impossible. It's easy to say it was coincidence, but when you start looking at it, and the same with the art, that the Egyptologists say there was no use of the golden section in the art, but it's not something you just happen upon.
Yeah, the golden ratio is all over. It's just not in one spot. Then you could say, well, it may be an accident. But no, it is, and it's such a large structure. You're talking about 480 feet tall. To have the golden ratio involved in every aspect of the Great Pyramid, then it is beyond coincidence. Yeah. There's just no way. Let's take a break right here, Chance. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner, director of Magical Egypt 1 and 2. Follow me on Twitter, at JChurch Radio. Follow Chance at Magical Egypt. He's got a special offer tonight for everybody, too, and we'll discuss that when we come back. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana Pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Tappy.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRAradio.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Chance at Magical Egypt, director of Magical Egypt, the series 1 and 2. And Chance, you've got a special offer tonight for the Fadernauts. Tell us about that.
Yes. Venice, help me with this. Special offer for the Fadernauts.
Yes, 30% off.
30% off.
All they have to do is when they check out, do F2B.
So there's a code when you check out. Enter F2B, and that allows all the lucky people who came to our site from Jimmy's site to get 1/3 off the show.
There you go. And that's all the way through episode 4.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
episode 4 is out now for people that don't know, and we're working hard on getting 5 and 6 done by Christmas. So there's lots of episodes to choose from,
and
each one a psychedelic experience.
And this will continue. So then when they go and they log in, they just click on My Library, and you'll just keep things updated.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Now, also, I wanted to go through a little bit here. We have to. The cast of characters. You've got Graham Hancock, Richard Casaro, who has not only been on this show, but somebody that I have mad respect for. That is just a really talented researcher.
Isn't he awesome? I heard your interview with him last night.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Richard, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, and you do a really effective presentation with him on the latest episode, but once you start to see what's going on in a transoceanic sense, right? This is a global thing. This isn't localized. And everybody is building the same thing. They are doing the same artwork, the same sculptures. And the presentation you do with him is absolute. What did he call it? The God
self icon.
The God self icon. I mean, I nearly blew my frontal lobes out That was what let me ask you about that for a second. When you started to look at all of this evidence of the God self, which spans thousands of years, every culture on this planet was doing the not similar, but the exact same thing. How did that hit you?
Because I've spent so much time in television, I know that there's certain topics that just are not for public consumption. And I was just a nut for Matt Groening in The Simpsons when I worked at Fox. So, I started before the war, before Fox became the cheerleader for the war. And it used to be this, I was so proud to work there because that's where The Simpsons were made. And I started noticing that there are certain subjects that never got through standards. They're funny things. I probably shouldn't talk about what they are, but they're really funny things. But these subjects that the writers kept trying to put in the scripts and the standards and practices, people at Fox were like, nope, we are not going to be expressing this idea on TV. So I was kind of familiar with the idea that there's certain ideas that are for public consumption and certain ideas that aren't. I'll try and tell a story really quickly. This just strange thing happened to me once when Venice and I were young and in the courtship period. We were in New York and we were flying to London. And we had an hour before we got on the plane, and we walked through this bookstore, one of those amazing New York bookstores. And I got a couple of books, didn't really have anything in mind. And this book kind of almost fell off the shelf on me. And it was this book called Cultivating Male Sexuality. It was just not something I would have been interested in normally, but I don't know why. It kind of jumped out of the shelf at me. Mantak Chia was the author. And it was about this thing that you almost never hear about except when insane people are talking about it or if you go to yoga class a lot, which is this ancient practice that employs this certain aspect of your nervous system. And it uses this negative and positive polarity in your body. Pretty much at this day and age, everyone is familiar with Kundalini, I would assume. And the schematic of Kundalini shows the human body, and you have this circuit called the Ida and a circuit called the Pingala, and one's male and one's female, one's red and one's white. And then this central thing called the Sushumna. And so it's such a strange thing, and I think because it has to do with your sort of what I call the psychosexual circuitry, because there's this aspect of luridness about it, because it involves sexuality and consciousness, like it acknowledges the role that sexuality plays in consciousness. It's sort of in itself this really dissident, kind of forbidden topic. And so just because, I love strange, forbidden things, I started reading this and I just became fascinated with this. And then once you understand that in the Western cultures, this never comes up, but in the East, it's not hidden at all. I mean, in some cultures hide it more than others, but like in Thailand and places like that, all the architecture and everywhere you look and all the religious symbolism all relates to the symbolism of two intertwining snakes that meet at the third eye. And so the whole symbolism of the third eye and the symbolism of these intertwined snakes is present in every single culture. And it always means the same thing, but the external translation of it tends to change from culture to culture. And then in the Western world, especially after that Victorian hangover that, we had from the 1800s, you just can't talk about sexuality, and especially like a yoga for your sexuality that actually results in these states of consciousness that you can't get at otherwise. I loved how the whole thing was so forbidden, and also that once you focus in on this idea that all of these ancient cultures in the days before television and the days before, football, there was nothing to focus on except this crazy machinery that we have. And somehow the ancients understood that there were these aspects or states of consciousness, modes of consciousness, that you had to do certain things to your body and your electrical system to allow your brain to access these higher states of consciousness. And they involve hallucinogens in some cases, and they involve these weird yogic things, and they involve sexual practices that are non-standard sexual practices. And so you can kind of see why this thing is just a no man's land, just this tangled nightmare for anyone in academia or anybody in Egyptology. But that snake that comes out, it's probably the most prominent symbolism in Egypt, the snake that comes out of the third eye. That's a language. And there's no question what that language means. So, going back to what you were saying before about, what made the project so interesting was this is a look at Egypt through eyes of artists. And every artist knows that art speaks in this language, and the symbolism is this language. And there's superficial things about symbolism, but all symbolism holds multiple layers of meaning. And in every culture, it seems like they were trying to immortalize this thing that nowadays is an extremely taboo and weird to talk about subject. But as artists, we have this certain liberty where we're encouraged. You know that word psychopomp? You know what a psychopomp is? It's
Yep.
The person that leads you across the threshold to death. The artist's role in society has always been as a psychopomp, to grab people by the hand and pull them into these uncomfortable areas that are scary, because they're new. And they're scary because all of our authority figures tell us to warn us to stay away from them, which for me makes me want to do it all the more.
That's right.
So as an artist, we're completely free and kind of encouraged to pick up these things that academia and Egyptology won't touch with a 10-foot pole. And it turns out that the very most prominent symbolism in Egypt points to this thing that is the central core of Taoism and Buddhism and a bunch of other traditions from the past. That clearly this was an incredibly important thing that all humans had to know. You weren't a finished person unless you knew. It ultimately is why you're here, to develop these circuits and finish your consciousness. And so I loved the radicalness of it. I loved the salaciousness of it. And I loved how it was a subject that really only artists can treat with any kind of respectability, because it is on this, it's in the Shadowlands. It's a strange back alley, but you have to acknowledge these things if you really want to understand what ancient Egypt was about. And then once you start thinking in that way and you start seeing the symbols, you see them everywhere, in architecture and in symbolism and in little things like Santa Claus myths. And we'll get Brad Clausen talking about this in an upcoming episode. When you sit down and look at all the things that we were taught in childhood as metaphors and myths and legends, a lot of them are veiled transmissions of this ancient science. But there was this thing that happened, with the Christian colonization of the Western mind, that there's just certain things where you're not supposed to think about them or you're not supposed to talk about them. And so when you start looking at the art, and that's the most important thing that the art expresses, we found ourselves in kind of a strange position, but as artists, it's kind of our role. And especially as, if you think of yourself as a punk rock voice, or a voice of moving society out of this old Victorianism into this bold new age, it's something that the Western world has to acknowledge and return to, is that this weird electrical psychosexual circuitry in your body is this just incredibly cool topic that used to be the most important thing in the world. And it makes me wonder, where did it go, and how might life be different for the individual if this technology was returned to us?
Well, how do you think, and especially when we're looking at these icons, these gods or kings that are holding these staffs or snakes or whatever it is, but the symbolism is exactly the same. How do you think, because that they weren't, the Egyptians weren't hanging out in Peru 1,500 years later or 1,000 years later. There wasn't any communication there. And that goes into Asia and into Mesoamerica. The communication wasn't there. But the symbolism is exact. How is this achieved? I still don't understand, unless it's like part of our DNA.
In the show, we look at three different things. To answer your question bluntly, I don't know, and I think it might be like the pyramid, that maybe nobody will ever know definitively the answer to that. There's three compelling arguments that come up most of the time. The first one is the least compelling, that they all just spontaneously thought of the exact same thing and the exact same symbols all by themselves. The second idea is that there is a mother culture that fed all of these cultures way, way, way back.
Right.
And that's pretty plausible.
Right.
And then, there's the fourth one that's very contentious, that aliens came and taught us that. And that's, that's a kind of slippery slope. And then there's this other thing that, if you have a bunch of time on your hands and there's no TV and there's no mall you can go to, and the only thing you have to look at is your stars and yourself, everyone has the same equipment. So if everyone is just looking at what they have, and if everyone is describing it, I can kind of see similarities. If everyone is secretly just describing the mechanics of consciousness or the structures of consciousness, I could kind of see a similarity through all these things. But the fact that the same symbolism is used, and once you start identifying this Ida and Pingala, this yogi, Kundalini, tantric symbolism, you see it everywhere. And I'd never realized the Mayans, I lived in California, so it wasn't a big deal to go down south. And look at all the Mayan temples. And I actually went down and did a big shooting spree and never did anything with the footage. But if you go to those temples and look at those things, they have symbolism of the snake. And it's just in Egypt, you see snakes climbing up staffs. The staff is symbolic of the spine, and the snake is symbolic of these circuits. The Mayans or Aztecs were so aesthetically minded, and they have a very different art direction, but it's the same symbols and it's the same thing. And I think the Temple of Chocmol has these snakes coming down in fact, the snakes aren't there in the architecture. They're implied. But then when the sun does this certain thing on the solstice, the whole statue or the whole pyramid's lined up so that the light from the sun on the solstice or the equinox or something creates in light and shadow this snake. And as the sun moves, the snake climbs the stairs. It is just this beautiful metaphor for the rising of the snake, the Kundalini snakes. And Venice and I just went to Thailand and Singapore recently, and Thailand, they wear it on their sleeve. Everything is climbing serpents intertwined, and this symbolism of how you have two bodies, you have a spiritual self and a physical self, and there's a constant struggle between your physical desires and your spiritual or, your psycho-spiritual desires. And so once you become aware of it, like you said, you start seeing it everywhere, and then you really start understanding that there's a very important part of our history that has been intentionally or unintentionally kept from us. And it's kind of, I think there's an imperative there, because this is a lost technology that is a technology of amplifying consciousness, of creating genius, and of getting your brain into all these states that we think of as supernatural, but they're these basic functions of consciousness, intuition and epiphany, and these things that are kind of spoken about in the Western world as if they're supernatural powers, but they're just these operating properties of consciousness. When you're on the second or third floor of consciousness, there's different modes you can get in. How like alpha state and theta state, when you watch TV, you go from a something state, you go from an active mental state to, I think it's a theta state, where you're basically hypnotized when you're watching television. So your brain has these different states, and the different states have different properties or different tools in the tool belt. And so if you do these things and you charge your body up, I don't know how graphic to get here, but if there's if you don't expend yourself in this certain way and you start charging your body up like a battery, the more you accumulate of this sexual energy, the more you start having these much higher end thoughts, and you start having this spontaneous creativity and these weird epiphanies and weird psychic flashes where you know what people are thinking or what they're about to say. And it's not crazy and it's not supernatural. It's just these latent abilities of consciousness, but that you have to understand how to get your electrical system in this place that allows these states of consciousness. And so it's certainly not a subject I'm an expert on, but ironically, the yogic and tantric traditions have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and they're very explicit about this self-directed evolution you can do. But it's just one of those things, and in the Western world, it's been kept from us, and it's like your inheritance got lost in the mail,
Well, you said, I think you are an expert, and I'll tell you why, and I want you to respond. You said to me a couple of times, you actually said it in an email too, that you checked out of watching television. And so in doing so, that's exactly what the ancients did. They didn't have television. So they were able to focus on the self and all of these things that connect us to each other and inside of us. Do you think you're starting to realize maybe that they, that's exactly what they were doing? That was their entertainment, right? Was to explore the self as opposed to being distracted.
And as forms of entertainment go, that's a pretty good one. That's way better than going to the market on a Sunday afternoon.
Sure. on many levels.
Very few things compete with that. Once you've done that, your interests tend to shift. And it really is like all of a sudden, you have these wings that nobody ever told you about. Or, what I think about a lot is imagine this alternate universe where Victorianism really ran wild, and to the point where we literally were programmed through this generations of education to forget about sex altogether, so that nobody ever talked about it, nobody mentioned it, and and you have this, appendage that sticks out of the front of you, but nobody's ever addressed what it's for, and they just say, well, that's horrible, and it's of the devil, so don't. And then one day somebody gives you Viagra, and you're like, well, something's going on down here that we're going to have to address, and there's nothing in my culture that addresses it, but it's this basic function, and once you learn about it, it changes everything, and then suddenly you're quite a bit less interested in playing softball or, league bowling.
And the other part of that is there had to have been, and I'm not sure what, but it was something that we don't understand today for sure, was the ability to move these statues, to carve to quarry the rock, to move the rock, to carve the rock. That is way beyond human strength. They didn't have horses, right? None of that stuff came into play. But it could have been some kind of mental or sound or I don't know, but somehow they got it done. Do you think it was, mental power? Was it some kind of telekinesis? How do you
I grew up on science fiction and fantastic tales, and I love that. I really hope that's what it is. I have a friend, Lon Milo Duquette's on our Coast to Coast a lot, and he's a huge prominent figure in the esoteric community. And there's a lot of people there that, I don't know how much you know about Crowley, but there's an organization that Crowley started that was all about the latent powers of the brain and telekinesis and stuff. And apparently in a real early, like one of your first lessons in Rosicrucianism, you start doing these exercises where you take a little piece of paper and put it on the head of a needle and then put the needle in water, and you just work on these calisthenics where you're trying to get the piece of paper to move around with your mind. And so I would never say that's not the case. I think that there's a cleverness that doesn't need technology. I really love the idea of sound. There's all kinds of people that are canceling out gravity with 3 octaves of sound. And, the whole Ed Leeds-Skounen and Coral Castle thing.
Absolutely.
So I would love the idea that, I've heard, I forget who I was reading the other day, but somebody suggested the idea that the entire pyramid was your final test in the esoteric school, that you could physically lift the pyramid with your mind. And I love that, and I really want that to be true. But if that turns out to not be true, it's also really interesting that they knew enough about the basic laws of the universe way before technology as we think about it to use the properties of sound. A really interesting thing I heard recently was if you take water and pour it on sandstone, because this only really works with sandstone, the water will get down into the pores. Sandstone is like a sponge. It's very porous. And then you put the sound on it, and it is actually the vibrating water that lifts the stone up. And so there is a number of really interesting people, Hutchinson, whatever, the Hutchinson effect, and a bunch of, they're all kind of kooky, iconoclastic people, but there's a lot of people lifting things with sound, and that seems to be the most promising. Oh, and the other thing that is really surprisingly contentious, even though it's a very pedantic idea, is the idea of liquid stone, geopolymers. The oldest cement in the world, and the oldest and still one of the best formulas for cement is the old Egyptian formula for cement. It's still in use today. So they knew about mixing things in this way so that it would last forever. And if you go and look at the pyramids and the way the pyramids fit without any space in between them, and you look at some of the statues, and like we were talking about those obsidian sculptures that can't be carved, they would have to be melted and poured. You see pictures of Egyptians even building, and they have these square pieces of wood with no top or bottom on them. And so if you put this square piece of wood down, you poured a geopolymer, this thing that hardens into stone, and then you move the thing and you make the next one. And as you lift up the stone, as you lift up the piece of wood, the stone's going to kind of bleed together, and you get that perfect alignment. So there's a number of really interesting geologists that have been doing some great studies about this. One of the, I really like Eric von Daniken as a person. One of the factual mistakes he made in a lot of his work was when he was saying the stuff on the Altiplano and, Tiwanaku and stuff, those weird doors that are carved into solid rock. That rock's a very soft rock, and there's even the Moche Indians to this day know these combinations of plants that soften stone. So you can put this formula on rock and literally press things into it or carve it. And so anyway, it's all to say there's some really interesting technology that if you're clever and if you know something and you have this, recourse to a few simple tools, you can do some amazing things with rock. And, those, like in the Mayan ruins, those little nipples that stick out of the rocks.
That's right.
You know, when you're looking at those, if you think about, there's a hose or some kind of delivery system that puts liquid rock into a mold, and then when you pull the hose off, that place where the hose connected, exactly what you'd expect to find is that little nipple as the stone hardens and it kind of bulges out there. So I find that very compelling, and that you don't really have that question about how did they move. Well, that's not true. That explains some things. There are some things like the obelisks that are single pieces of stone, and how on earth did they move that stuff? I love the whole alien intervention idea, but I wouldn't say I absolutely think that's what it is. It would sure explain a lot, and some kind of anti-gravity technology. I would sure love to be there on the day that were proven conclusively. I can't say. I don't really know. And my domain really is the effect that it has once it's in place. I'm just one of the punters with an opinion about how they move the stones.
Well, have you ever seen anything strange in the sky?
Well, I grew up next to Area 51. I was raised in Las Vegas, and I saw something in California in that, what's it called? The canyon by the ocean. Man, I haven't been to California. Topanga. Yeah, Topanga's a real hot spot, and I saw some crazy weird thing there one time. And my grandfather saw things all the time in the desert, all the experimental craft and stuff.
Wait. What did you see in Topanga?
Oh, this crazy. I don't want to sound like a UFO nut. I am a nut, so it doesn't matter. I guess if I put labels on what kind of nut I am. But I had a friend of mine who was this very high-powered guy in television. He came from rock and roll, and he's a really cool guy. And we'd been out drinking, and we were just wrecked. And somehow we both made it home. And when he got home, he called me up, and he's like in this state, and he's a very cool guy. He doesn't get into a state very often. He's like, you got to get in your car right now and come over here. And he was driving up Topanga Canyon, and he saw this thing that rattled him. So I was in Santa Monica at the time. It's not that bad a drive. So I get in my car. And I'm not advocating drunk driving to anyone who might be listening, but when UFOs are involved, I don't know. Anyway,
right.
So I go out there, and he shows me where it is, and we stand there, and there's this thing that looks like about the size of a basketball. It's in this tangle of, I don't know if you know Topanga Canyon, but there's this tangle that you're not going to go out there. You're not going to take a film crew out there. There's just no way to get out there to the spot. But there's this thing that was just like, it was levitating, it was hovering. And it wasn't that far away from us, and you could tell it was about a basketball, but it was emitting a light that was so much, like I work with lights all the time. And when you're filming and stuff, I have a pretty good idea of what technology is out there for lighting. And this was just this small little thing that was basketball size, but it was so bright, and it hovered there. It wasn't suspended by anything. It wasn't held by anything. And we just sat and looked, and it never did go anywhere. And just after a while, you're like, all right, well, that happened. And I don't know what to make of it or what it was. Wow. And then all the time, my grandfather used to tell me stories about the stuff that I think I go back 3 generations in Las Vegas. And, that's my mom used to tell me stories. This is kind of a tangent. I'll tell you this really quickly. When my mom was a kid, they'd announce on the radio, hey, folks, we're doing a nuclear test. Make sure and get up on your roofs and watch it.
Right.
So she'd climb up on her roof, and they'd count it down. There's this little mushroom cloud that goes off in the distance. And she'd tell me about, you count 7 seconds, and this pleasant warm breeze would blow by. And now, of course, everyone there's got skin cancer and stuff. Vegas has always been a crazy place for that.
I've seen some old black and white films, from back in the day, where they would announce, okay, go outside, in Vegas, and, at such and such a time, the sky's going to light up. They're doing a nuclear test, and people are out there on the street looking at, the night sky light up. And it's just great. What we know today, to think that actually used to go on is just absolutely mind-blowing. All right, we got to take a break right here, Chad. So let's do that. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner. He is the director of Magical Egypt 1 and 2. More with Chance when we come back. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal God, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat. Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com. Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. What a great conversation tonight with Chance Gardner, director of Magical Egypt 1 and 2. And, excuse me, I just cleared my throat. Magical Egypt 1 was a game changer for me, and everybody on the show knows that. And Magical Egypt 2 is certainly shaping up to do the exact same thing. It takes things to a whole nother level. And what I wanted to ask you, Chance, you sit down with Graham Hancock, too, as well. What did you come away with from those conversations?
Well, Graham is just this titanically nice person. I live in Australia now, and there's a lot of English people, and English people just love to pick apart Americans, and people don't realize how vastly hated we are outside of the States. And so I had this kind of experience with a lot of English people, and I sit down with Graham, and he's just this lovely man, but also because his whole education is in journalism. You know, he's a proper journalist, and when he expresses ideas, they're these perfect little Swiss watches that are self-contained, and they're awesome and perfectly structured, and they have a clear in and a clear out. So not only is he informationally great, but as an editor and, a person who puts shows together, he's just a dream to work with, and just became one of my favorite people. He's an awesome guy, and he really is kind of covering a different frequency than John. Their work overlaps a lot. They all went together with Robert Schock, who's a very important part of all this too, to Yonaguni. They kind of collaborated on the Yonaguni findings. And so John has a lot of interaction with Graham, and that's kind of my interaction with Graham is through John most of the time. But when I'm around him and I get a chance to sit down and chat with him, I just absolutely love the guy. Plus, he's from outside of the system too, so he can address things like how important psychedelics are in the new paradigm. And he's taken it on the chin for that, and you got to admire it all the more that I'm sure that opportunities have passed. Well, he got banned from TED Talks for speaking frankly about that. And so you got to love anybody who is so dedicated to shining a light on important things that you'll personally take it on the chin to be able to express ideas that, the powers that be don't like expressed in public.
Have you spoken to John Anthony West lately?
John got really sick a while ago.
Yes.
And there was just such a wall of people wishing him well and stuff. So we took an active hand in all the telethons and stuff, but I haven't spoken to him in a while. I need to reconnect with him because we've got a lot of work to do for future episodes. But I don't know if people know, he just went through this incredible health challenge.
We've
it's a whole
talked
interesting
about it.
thing by itself because it's cancer. Not many people walk away from cancer.
Right.
But John, he came out the other side.
I did the same thing. I just kind of laid off, but I out of guilt, I called him. This was about a month ago. So I called him, and I didn't want to do it. And, I didn't want to bother him. And I thought, man, he's probably resting. So, I was like, screw it. So I call him. I get his answering machine, and I leave this ridiculous, just a stupid message, whatever. And I hung up, and I just thought, man, he's recovering. And I just felt so guilty after that and felt so foolish. But we just wish him the best. And I hope he's listening right now. What does he think? Any feedback from him on the second series?
I know he's watched them. I haven't heard any feedback from him, which always makes me a little bit nervous. And there's some things that I'm quite interested in that he's just vehemently polarized against. So I've had to be really mindful in this show. It's part of the reason I put myself in the show this time is I want to make it clear that there's ideas that I'm originating that he doesn't necessarily endorse. But he's such a grandfather of all of this stuff. And in a weird way, he's like my dad, where I'm just, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm just doing this whole thing to please him, make him happy. And to shine a light on his body of work. Cause he was, I don't know if we've talked about this already, but what I think was so important about the original Magical Egypt was it wasn't a documentary about Egypt per se. It was a documentary about the emergence of this new counterculture. And very much like the 60s, you get all of these same things that the last counterculture had. You have this orthodoxy, and then you have these people pushing against the orthodoxy, and then the orthodoxy pushes back. And there's this very necessary shift in human thinking that had to be the psychopomp thing. Again, it's an uncomfortable shift in thinking, but it has to be done so we can all move forward collectively. And talk about a vanguard and a guy who's not afraid of getting in a fight. And I think one of the reasons people like him so much is he does not pull punches, and he's a scrapper, and so much of my thinking was templated from him. And so my relationship with him is very much like my relationship with my dad, that he, I just absolutely adore the guy, and there's a lot of things I do that disappoint him, but what are you going to do?
We went last year. Rita and I, we had to film. We had to shoot for History Channel in Manhattan, and of course, you go to the Met, and we did the Egypt thing, and we spent all day there. And
wow.
The next day, though, this is what Rita and I were walking through Central Park. And I call Jaws, I call him and I go, dude, man, just went through the Met, the Egyptian. And he tell me about it, Jimmy. So I'm walking through Central Park, talking to John Anthony West on the phone, telling him about the highlights of the Egyptian wing, and he's giving me the commentary.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
How cool. Does it get any better than that? Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Him correcting me on a couple of things. I'm just like, man, this is just awesome. But Laird, John Anthony West, we love you, John. Get better. Laird Scranton.
Yeah.
Tell me, his take on things, again, this counterculture that you're referring to. You know, the Bivol, Scranton, Andrew Collins, John Anthony West. There's Laird Scranton, and he, I think, has also been hugely influential back onto John Anthony West. The two of them really go together well.
Yeah, there's some major points of contention between them, but they're like two superheroes that have punched through this giant wall. I love Laird. Laird's one of the kindest, nicest people in the world. And what I particularly like about Laird is, like all of us that I feel like are really making a difference, he's an outsider, you know. He has nothing to do with Egyptology, but he spent his whole life comparing old and new. His job was to show up and fix computers, and he had to look at the computer code, the original code, and then the code that was on the computer, and he'd cross-compare them and figure out where the code's been modified. And he has this, like, I don't want to call it autism, it's a savantism, where he's like a systems analyst, and he's got this meticulous sense of detail, and he's patient, you know, and he'll just sit and sit and sit until the problem presents itself, or the solution presents itself. So he was really one of the first people to make it clear for me that there was a very sophisticated science. You know Laird enough to know that Laird demonstrated that in the Dogon and Egyptian hieroglyphs, there were all of these scientific notation, and that there's a signifier that says this thing you're about to read is a scientific term. And so there was this brilliant way that they would encode science into a word, like the word for month. The 3 hieroglyphs are basically to say the time it takes for the moon to go around the earth, or their word for year. If you take the individual hieroglyphs, the word year is also a sentence that says the time it takes for the earth to go around the sun one time. And that was the first time it occurred to me that Egypt, you know, we've inherited what we know about Egypt from these people that really weren't scientists. This is this whole conversation I love to engage in, the difference between the sciences and the humanities. And Bivol just recently pointed out, if you really think about what's the difference between the sciences and the humanities, it kind of gives you an insight into the territorialism that happens in Egyptology, because Egyptology is a humanity, it's not a science. So when people like Laird come along, or like myself from a different perspective, or people like Brad or Gary Osborne or Robert Bivol, you know, Robert Bivol's an engineer, and he's all about science, provableness, you know, double-blind tests and provableness. And Laird demonstrated in this way that you can't argue with that they had a really tight understanding of physics, down to, you know, that we've only just recently caught up with. I'm not enough of a scientist to really understand much about string theory, but Laird shows that the Dogon, and in the Egyptian it's a lot more veiled, but the Dogon are quite explicit about this thing came down from this planet of fish. It was a reptile. It didn't like being around us. It was dangerous for us to be around it, but it told us these things about the universe, including here's what the tiniest particle is, which it turns out was a fantastic schematic of an atom, and then here's what an atom's made of, and then here's what an electron's made of, and here's what a quark is made of. And until really recently with string theory, we didn't really even understand what was smaller than atoms or what was smaller than electrons. And so Laird comes along and demonstrates that this was encoded into the culture, and it was amazing. Beyond that, John and I, one of the funnest times I ever had with John West was he and I went to Vassar College, where Laird went, and Risa, his wife Risa. And we just had this fantastically great time filming Laird on the college and just goofing around and stuff. But it just kind of came up in conversation that if there is anything to past lives, I think Laird was Champollion in a past life, because he has this aptitude and this natural savantism for
hieroglyphics,
understanding this language.
Yes. When he broke down the parts of the inside of an atom, which we didn't know until electron microscopes and the mid-70s. I mean, everything was, the smallest thing there was an atom. And now we've gone inside. But clearly, I think Laird has demonstrated that they had an understanding of what was on the inside of an atom. And it's a mind-blowing thing to go through, but he presents it in a very clear way.
Yeah. It's something that I have yet to learn how. These are some of the smartest, most complicated ideas ever. And trying to transmit ideas that are that smart does not lend itself to sound bites and buzzwords and, the common currency of mass media and communicating with the public. It's really an unusual individual that can take something like string theory and tell it to you in a way that you actually understand it.
Robert Bauval. And your conversation with him is really, really cool.
He kills me. He just kills me.
Now this is where I've always kind of tripped here, is that Bauval, John Anthony West, Schock, Graham Hancock. You can throw Collins into there too. You have to. All really tipped everything over just about at the same time. And, they're like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Especially for Egyptologists. But today, here we are in 2017, and their revelations from 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, which all happened just about at the same time, too, as well, are starting to stand up for themselves in a very solid way, don't you think?
Yeah, I was really this is an episode we're going to do as soon as John's healthy enough to move around a little bit, is the I Told You So tour, where all of these things that these people have been, sustaining blows their whole lives. They've been beaten with authority sticks, and finally society and technology has advanced to the point where there's very few people now that are disputing this anymore. And with John in particular, this happened a few years ago, but there's encyclopedias coming out now. I think there's a huge compendium encyclopedia that came out in Russian that lists John and his Sphinx theory as a viable alternative. These are actual, establishment history books and science books that begrudgingly, because of the relentlessness and the hard-headedness and of these people, those people you just mentioned, our whole paradigm has changed. And that, in a way is like Bob Dylan or John Lennon, that all you do is you keep singing your little songs and you stay true to yourself, and the whole world bends to meet the force of your ideas.
Now, have you had, certainly going back to Magical Egypt 1, what's the pushback that you've gotten from those traditional Orthodox Egyptologists and the system?
I've only been in the room with Mark Lehner once. I met Zahi a bunch of times. I used to have to pretend to be things like air conditioning repairman and just make up stuff so I could get into places where you weren't supposed to go. But I don't have anything to do with it. There are people out there that are just angry and they're defending an idea, not because the idea is true, but because there's I'm not saying either of those two names I just mentioned, but just in general, if you're familiar with the dynamic of ancient Egypt, there's a lot of really fussy, angry, pissy people that are committed to protecting their reputation as being all-knowing, and it's not really about the truth. It's about I'm getting a bunch of money because I'm an expert and people are paying attention to me, and all of a sudden these guys from outside of Egyptology come along with these theories that completely undo my entire model of things. And so I can kind of see, just from a human standpoint, it's a huge thing in the human psyche that if you've built a whole life on being a whole reputation on being an authority, somebody comes along and pulls a string out of your castle and it falls down, and you're going to go to great lengths to keep somebody from doing that to you. So there's this dynamic there that is, it's just part of the landscape, and I don't pay attention to it. I couldn't care less. Of course they think that. I know a lot of people with views different than mine, and I just don't, they're free to, I'm not inviting them over to any parties I have at my house. I know that they believe that. I don't care.
Why do you think, and it's okay, let it hang out, Chance, let it hang out. Why do you think Lerner is happy with towing the line? He has spent more time on the Giza Plateau than probably anybody that's walking the planet right now, right? And there's no question about that. But his mind is shut. Why do you think that is?
Here's what I learned. Don't bash anybody in a public forum. I have no idea what's going on with the guy. He's an authority. There's a story that let's see if I can say this in those general sense. Do you know anything about the Edgar Cayce Foundation?
Well, let me jump in really quick. I don't bash anybody, and I'm not asking you to bash anybody. But my thing is when you're out there on the Giza Plateau, you should be the opposite. Yeah, you should be wondering about this, and he doesn't wonder about a thing, and I just don't get it.
I'll tell you something, and I have to flag this as being just the worst case and worst sort of speculation. There's this really interesting thing, and it's a meme, and I can't say that I've ever seen any signed official documents, but it's not a big secret that the Edgar Cayce Foundation paid for Zahi's education, which is a very strange thing. And Lehner was somehow wrapped up in this really early on. And I will only say this because you're cajoling me to, and I have to keep saying I'm no expert, and I'm prone to flights of insanity, and so maybe I'm just crazy about the whole thing. But it really seems to me like they were there specifically to keep people from arriving at this. I'm hugely active in some of the organized esoteric cultures, and there's people that tell me all the time, if you're a Rosicrucian, you go to Egypt and you get a tour of things that the public's not allowed to see, and it's these people who tell you it's not there, or the people that lead the tours. I can't even. I'm sounding like Tom DeLonge. I just don't have enough authority to say anything except crazy things that I suspect. But what you just said, I think, is the most important thing. There's no way, if your eyes work, that you can hold on to that old model. They just, interestingly, they just published a book. And they published a book, and it was like Gerald Posner's book about JFK. It was like, yep, everything the government said is true, so shut up with the conspiracies. They just published a new book about the pyramid, and it happened right before the new room was found in the pyramid, or that evidence.
The chamber, right.
Yeah, there may be a chamber there. And so they go out and they do this publicity tour, and as I said at the top of the show, the essence of science is that there's a time and a place where you can make conclusions, but there's also a time where you can't make conclusions because the data is not settled, analyzed yet. And they were a little too quick to come out and say, "Oh, there's not a room there." And my whole life, I've been, there's been a sort of obstacle made of invisible bricks. It's always there, and it's just there to keep people from taking this stuff seriously. And I don't understand what's behind it. I don't think it's accidental, but beyond that, I can only speculate.
And when you walk around the plateau there's so much sand that is still left. This is what I said to I said this to Shock a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of joking, but yet serious. If I had all the money in the world, I would build a giant vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, and give California back some of the sand that it's been losing to the ocean.
I would.
Not too long ago, there's been significant breakthroughs in technology where you can just fly over in a plane and look right through it like it's water. And there's all kinds of stuff there that nobody's found yet. I forget the guy's name. He's a really prominent guy in Egypt. He's super smart. He looks like John Podesta, just super sharp character. That was one of those people behind Zahi. And he got the contract to develop this technology. And then suddenly everything went quiet in Egypt. So there's some massive things that they've found by looking under the sand that we're not allowed to know about.
Did you just say DeLong and Podesta inside of 5 minutes?
See, I'm not here to bash anybody.
Man. You just want to see Twitter light up, and very effectively done. And I want to hold you over. We're going to be heading towards a break. I want to hold you over for a little overtime, if that's okay.
Awesome.
All right. Is this when you look at, and I'm not bashing on Lehner at all, but when you look around, there obviously is stuff underneath that sand still.
Yep.
It's not over on the plateau, and then we look at this chamber. That, again, I will bash on Zahi. I have no problem with that. But his whole thing, I don't believe in radar. Radar does not exist, right? And there's nothing left to discover. Well, clearly there is. And when you look at the Great Pyramid, you know that it is not over with. And now they have found a chamber. And I really think that there is a lot of stuff underneath that sand but they just don't want to go and figure it out. They would rather say there's nothing to see here, move along.
Yep. Yeah. And if you do that, I mean, one thing I have to admit is Zahi's an incredibly intelligent person and just a real powerhouse. Like, I would not want to get in a fist fight with him. And, you know, the Egyptian, the Arabic way is very forceful and hyper masculine. And so he's a fantastic bulldog, and his mind is very acute. But I think he's been doing this for so long that he jumps in before it's appropriate to jump in, and in a sense gives himself away by how polarized he is. If even once during our entire lives he would have admitted something was cool and mysterious and that he didn't already know about it, that would go a long way. But the fact that he's got a 100% record for coming out of the woodwork just to discredit something and then go away again. And that whole thing about pyramidiates, you know, that common clip of him that he says, anyone who, I won't try and do the accent, but he says, anyone who, people see all these imaginary measurements in the pyramid. And I call those people pyramidiates. And to me, when you've run out of intellectual bullets, you start name calling, you know what I mean? And the essence of science isn't, your emotions have no place in science. So you don't hear Thomas Edison calling people idiots who don't agree with him. I don't know, maybe you do, but he was a colorful character, Edison. But you know what I mean? There's a time and a place for science, and there's an arena of science where the best ideas go in and fight it out, and that's what determines what's right. And if you have to resort to name calling, and I'm not even going to address that argument because that person's an idiot, or anybody who recognizes that the pyramid has the exact distance to the moon and incorporates the speed of light in its measurements, and there's some stuff we're going to be showing that Gary Osborne and Robert Bivol have been collaborating on, where it's just breathtaking, the stuff that's in the pyramids that people haven't noticed so far. And I keep coming back to this thing that clearly I would be surprised if they didn't know as much as everybody did, and it calls into attention who's really what is their real role there, and why is it so important that we not make these discoveries?
Well, you know, the thing is with Zahi over the years, he is, like you said, he's clearly intelligent. But when he had that dust up, that I'm not going to go into, but when he had that dust up and that video spread, and he turns around for somebody that's supposed to know everything about everything when it comes to archaeology and Egypt and megalithic structures and everything else, and for him to say, well, Göbekli Tepe, I've never heard of Göbekli Tepe. What is you talking about? I'm like, wait a minute, dude. You know, you can't. Did he just say that? You know, and I just lost. That's it. I mean, for me, he's a canceled check. I just don't take him serious anymore.
Well said.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't bash on anybody, but that just and this was directed at not only Graham but Robert and all of the brilliant research that has gone down about Göbekli, and Göbekli is overshadowing his precious pyramid structure as being the original. The start of the human race was right here, and now.
Well, you know, the reason that he is really polarized against Göbekli Tepe was that so much of their argument that they used to ridicule John was that there's no culture, there was no civilization at that time, so what you're saying couldn't be true. And Lehner in Mystery of the Sphinx had that classic line, well, if that was the case, show me a potsherd. Show me this, show me a potsherd. And all of a sudden Göbekli Tepe is like the grandmother of all potsherds, and so they hate that because they used to be able to disqualify John just by saying, well, we all know there was no civilization back then, so what you're saying can't be true. And now all of a sudden we know that there was a civilization. So what else has John said? It turns out very probably John's entire model is exactly correct, and that it's Egyptology that built its castle on the sand.
And not only that, can you imagine with Lehner and the entire professional society, if that convention, that conference in San Diego was held 3 years later?
Yeah.
3 years later.
Which one are you talking about? Which
the
conference?
1992 conference when him and Schock.
Right.
Right. So 3 years later, Göbekli Tepe is discovered. Yeah. And then,
well, you know that thing that happened real recently? I don't know if it was Bivol or maybe it was Graham, but somebody at a major university, a big arena, I don't know how many people there. Lots of people were there. And they were going to have a debate between Zahi and Graham. I think it was Graham. If it was Robert, forgive me. But it became so clear before the debate even started that those people were just there to laugh at Zahi, and he was literally drummed out of the arena. He actually quit, like ran away with his tail between his legs.
Yeah, no, that was in Egypt. That was Zahi going back to Egypt. That was
on his home turf.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was in Cairo. That was his big triumphant return. I do believe. I could be wrong. We got to take a break right here. And when we come back, man, we almost ran right up to the network break. When we come back, we're going to do a little overtime with Chance Gardner. And when we come back, I want to know, and we haven't danced here yet, Chance, I want to know what you think the Great Pyramid was built for. We'll wait till we come back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Chance Gardner, the director of Magical Egypt 1 and 2. We'll be right back.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night, you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. GetTheT.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. GetTheT.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Doing a little overtime with Chance Gardner. Excited about this. I knew it, too, by the way. I said to Chance before the show, I said, we're going to run out of time, man. Get ready for some overtime. And you can go ahead and verify. Did we have that exact conversation?
That is exactly as he said.
Now, what this is where I trip a little bit, and let's go there. Everybody, and that includes Egyptologists, everybody's got a theory about the purpose of the Great Pyramid, and I think that everything, all those chips need to be pushed to the center of the table and discussed, because clearly we don't have a blueprint, we don't have a book, we don't have an instruction manual. So what is your take? What's your gut tell you today?
Well, obviously, this is one of those scratching posts that a lot of much better minds than I have been scratching at for a long time. There's the real popular Christopher Dunn idea that the whole thing was electrical generator, and there was that, I forget who it was, a famous, pirate or something that lived in the pyramids for a long time. His name's carved there. And he showed with the Leyden jar and the wet paper, you know what a Leyden jar is? You can make this electrical accumulator. And so people back in, 15, 16, 1700s were interested in the weird amount of electricity that the pyramid accumulated. The more I think about it, and especially I've had this series of conversations with Robert Bauval that I literally, sometimes talking to him, well, all these people, John and Graham do this to me too, but Bauval and I recently did a 3-hour interview, and pieces of it are coming out in the upcoming episodes, but talking to him sometimes is like eating a sandwich that's bigger than my head, and I've got to expand myself to such a place where I can even process these ideas. So remember Mayor McCheese, remember those old McDonald's commercials, that thing that had a giant hamburger head? Right. My head looks like that a lot of the time after I talk to Bauval, just trying to accommodate these huge ideas. He seems to think, well, anyway, the question that was raised in my mind from talking to him about this is, it doesn't have to be these two things, but it's either functional, like it's a machine that does something, or it's representational, where we talk a lot in the show about didactic art. The point of art and the point of architecture in the old days was to be didactic, to communicate information. Before paper, before you carried a book around, there were books that you walked through, and the temples are that. The temples are 3D books that you walk through. They're didactic. They're educational. So Bauval seems to think that because of the weird number of universal constants and mathematical constants and geometric proportions, and there is, by the way, this, if you know, at the right place in the pyramid, it tells you the exact distance from the Earth to the Moon. It tells you the exact circumference of the Earth. It tells you the exact, incorporated in the proportions of the pyramid are all these unbelievable things. And I don't think I'm scooping anybody. Robert Bauval and Gary Osborne recently just published a book, and Gary's published this already, so I'm not letting anybody's thunder out. If anything, I'm promoting the book that they're putting out. But incorporated in the measurements of the pyramid are the speed of light down to like 27 digits. It's just freakish how the more we learn about the pyramid, the more it seems to be this just bristling with all of these universal constants and things that humanity really needs to know to get anywhere, or things that they wouldn't recognize until we've got to a certain point. So if you like Stanley Kubrick, I know you're kind of a film buff, right. 2001 and that monolith that was just there and was inaccessible until humanity had reached a certain level of technology. The pyramid is that in a certain way, but a lot of things incorporate sacred geometry, and they don't do it for other people. Like, as Bauval points out, a lot of the most interesting stuff about the pyramids are things that you would never see from the outside because they're all covered with rock and stuff. So it may turn out that there's a function to the pyramid that people haven't figured out yet. And as a musician myself, and you know about this, when you're playing guitar in a room and there's a drum set in the room, there's certain notes you can hit on the bass that'll make the cymbals vibrate.
Right.
It's this kind of primal, prototypical magic where you're creating an effect at a distance with no visible connection between the two of you, but I can do something, and something from a distance resonates in this certain way. It's really the essence of magic. So the pyramid is so based on these resonant proportions and these things that are exact multiples of the size of the Earth and exact multiples of the surface area of the Earth and exact multiples from the distance from. And so a guitar, this just came up when I was talking to Robert the other day, my Gretsch that we were talking about. The reason this Gretsch is so special is Brian Setzer took an old 2160 country gentleman Gretsch, and with his own money, he took it to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and he had a CAT scan done on it because there was some resonant property that this guitar had that he'd never found another guitar that it had. And when you X-ray the guitar, there's this support bridge that no other guitar has. And so by X-raying it and looking at these things that you would never be able to observe from the outside, there were features of this guitar that made it more resonant. And there's so much about the pyramids that has to do with this resonance or this correspondence. And so I'm like a dog trying to study the stock market, or a fish trying to ride the bicycle. It's clearly the product of an intelligence that I'm not going to come anywhere close to, but you can do things, you can observe things, and the nature of consciousness and inquisitiveness is that how many things do I understand about this and what kind of model can I put together? I would like to think that it's functional. The way that it's situated in the exact center of the landmasses, it's just heavy enough that it might do something to the rotation of the Earth. It might have had a stabilizing effect if the Earth was terraformed. This would be a fantastic bit of technology that would help the terraforming of the Earth. There may be something with resonance where it allowed the transfer of either vibrations or power of some kind. And maybe it was ornamentational. Maybe it was just there as this repository. Did you ever see Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, by the way?
I watch it once a month.
Oh, good on you. They should start a church based on that. Anyway, that idea that Douglas, I stood next to Douglas Adams once. I shook his hand, Douglas Adams. He used to write for Monty Python.
Yes, he did.
Excuse me. Anyway, there in that movie, there was this fantastic scene where this guy who was the creator of worlds always found some clever way to sign his work. And if there was some, vastly more superior intelligence and they left their signature, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just something about it that's so smart that's hard to put into words. And to me, the closest I've come to even starting to file it in my mind is it's either functional or it's representational, and it's incredibly interesting in both situations. I always thought it was sort of funny that people said they put all those stones up to protect the body of the pharaoh, and in that show, in episode whatever it was, 2, I think, or 1, I made the observation that sort of made me laugh that if you're going to hide something, what's the most innocuous place to hide something? I know. How about the exact center of the Earth's landmasses? There's got to be no place in the world that's more prominent than the exact center of the Earth's landmasses. The idea that you're going to hide something by putting it in the exact center of the Earth's landmasses is funny to me.
Well, this is where the shaft that goes to the lower chamber, which is, it's 300 feet and it's 3 foot square. It's perfect. It's utterly straight and perfect.
Yep.
But I have always felt that lower chamber was there already. That there's a cave. That there's a cave. They dug that chamber, or they dug the shaft to go to that chamber. And Andrew Collins found the cave system underneath Giza. And I've often wondered if that cave system isn't connected to that lower chamber, and that there's other stuff down there, and that's what that shaft was dug for. And then the pyramid was built on top of that, and that the lower shaft was done first. Now,
if the pyramid weren't there, if the Great Pyramid weren't even there, it would still be this wonder of the ancient world, because the platform that the pyramid's on is the amount of stone and the size of the stones that are in the thing that the pyramid sits on is this thing that is so vast, and it dwarfs anything in the pyramids. And some people think that was there long before the pyramid was there, or that the pyramid was built over the top of something incredibly old that was already there. But that room down below, have you been in there, right?
No, I have not. We're going next year, though.
Oh, it's crazy. Well, what you'll notice is that it looks like it started as a fairly small room, and over the years, people have scooped really ugly and crudely, scooped more and more of this room out as the years went by. And then they left it in this unfinished state. Like, this is exactly the square inches of raw material we need down here. And so John West was the first one that I'd heard suggest this idea that maybe it has something to do with resonance, because you scoop out more and more and more until the resonance is just right. But you got to think about it. They're very clever people. And you put a big pile of rocks in front of anybody, and people are going to be spending centuries trying to dig in and steal whatever's there. So I don't know how much was done by really clever, ambitious grave robbers. But you're right. When you get there, the first thing you'll notice is it's not anything like the architecture. It doesn't seem intentional, or it seems like vastly, vastly older than the pyramid. So you're definitely onto something there.
Now, and when you start to, I want to discuss the chamber that was just discovered too as well, but you bring up one of the best points. We can talk about 2.5 million rocks and stones all day long, and that's great. It's unbelievable. But they leveled 18 hectares or 18 acres of plateau.
Yeah.
Put the sandstone on top of that. Each one of those stones weighs more than like 3 cars. And they not only placed that, but it is perfectly level. It's perfectly square. It's obviously, we all know it's directly at magnetic north to a 500th of a degree, by the way.
Yeah.
And so when you apply all of that and then throw in this, it was done by a Stone Age man. It's just like, dude, stop playing with my emotions here.
Did you know about the San Francisco? I forget what it's called. There's a building in San Francisco that's a giant pyramid. And it was made in the late 80s.
Transamerica Bank.
Good on you, exactly. Transamerica building. So with the pinnacle of technology at the time and relying on satellites and relying on, the best people in the world and the best equipment in the world, they sought, the architect admirably, wanted to do an homage to the Great Pyramid. And so that building is aligned to magnetic north, true north, I think, not magnetic north, because the magnetic north shifts a lot, but true north is always constant. I may be wrong about that. But anyway, they set out to do that same alignment. And with the best of technology, they're way off. I mean, compared to the pyramid. The pyramid is more accurate. And it's been there for, at least 6,000 years that we know of, and maybe hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years. But in all that time, the pyramid is still more accurate than the best of technology was able to produce. So if you go to San Francisco, which I'd highly recommend, and go see this building, it's off by several, I don't know what the measurement is, but it's like the pyramid is considerably more precise to this day. And it's just another one of those many mysteries that the pyramid expresses.
So what do you think is in this chamber?
I sure hope it's something. You know what? Honestly, I'll tell you, I'll bet $1 American that we're never going to know, and that Zahi's going to kick everybody out and get in there and do what he did to Gantenbrink and steal the surprise. And
I said the exact word for word 2 weeks ago. Word for word, Chance. I think that's how it's going to play out. It's going to be empty.
Yeah, we're not going to know whatever it is.
Right. Okay. Now, what would you like it to be?
Oh my God, I would love it to be anything. It's gonna. Well, I mean, what is it going to be? You know about the solar boat? The solar boat was just found unassembled. Disassembled. Mm-hmm. And when you were talking before about that idea of how did these ideas get around, were these people in communication and stuff? You know the story about Thor Heyerdahl. That Thor Heyerdahl way back did this reed boat, according to the old way that they've made boats on the Altiplano, just with reeds, but it was the high prow, the high front prow and the high back prow, like Viking boats.
Yep, the raw.
And there's no reason why you'd need a high prow in Egypt, because all you're ever going to do is sail on the Nile. And so everybody, it's kind of a prejudice of history and Egyptology that there was no transoceanic sailing, but there are these prototypes of ships. And so Thor Heyerdahl, the amazing sociologist, anthropologist, put together this old boat with just reeds and stuff and sailed intercontinentally. He found Easter Island and stuff. And so if you know about the trade currents, which apparently they did, it's not unthinkable that there was contact, back in the day, because he proved that it was possible, and he did it, and he lived to tell the story. And it's just one of those things that nobody talks about when they try and champion that idea of no contact. But then next to the pyramid, there was this thing that was just there. Here you go, humanity. Here's this thing. It's called a boat. And they don't know how old it is, but you can go and see it. They put it back together, and it was this high-prowed boat that looks sort of Viking. I think I did a piece with this on this with John, where John was there and he was talking about pointing things out that this was supposed to be a ceremonial boat. The boat they said that Osiris went to heaven in, and it was supposed to be symbolic, but it's actually torn up by coral and stuff, and it looks like it was actually in use. And it seems to be this transoceanic vessel that was just left there for future generations. And the Egyptians found it and they put it together, and it's an amazing thing. There's no nails. You put it together like a kit, and then when you put it in the water, the wood swells up and makes it airtight. And it's this brilliant piece of engineering. And anyway, what I would hope is that there's going to be something there, like you were talking about. It's whatever's there is more of the same that's been hidden underneath the basement in the Cairo Museum. That I think there's things that were actual tools that enabled Kundalini and stuff like that. You see a lot of those crooks, the crook and flail, and you see a lot of gods with this staff that curved over and was attached to the top of the spine of people when they were. I mean, there's so much there that once you start looking down that road, if there is anything there, and if this is really a repository, then maybe there's some bit of technology that addresses some aspect of science that we're not supposed to know about. I don't think there's anything in the pyramid that they haven't already found and ransacked, frankly. But if I got to wish and my wish came true, clearly it's some technology that is of benefit to us, that employs science that we've forgotten about.
Yeah, we at the Met in New York. They have this stela, and it's gorgeous, and it's like black granite, right? And I'm gonna say 3 feet tall, foot wide, with the round top. It's probably 2 inches thick, covered in this perfectly preserved hieroglyphics, and it's gorgeous. You look at it, the letters, the hieroglyphics are maybe half-inch tall, and there's thousands of them on this thing, and it's just gorgeous. And you look and you're like, man, that is the most intricate, crazy, carved, perfect, beautiful thing ever. But then right next to it, and I'm not kidding, I've got a picture of it. Right next to it, they have this copper needle. It's about 6 inches long, and a piece of chicken bone. And they literally say these were the tools that were used to carve this stela, and they were found next to it at the same archaeological dig. And here it is. And you're looking, and you're like, dude, that is the biggest load of crap I've ever seen in my life. That was not carved with that. There is no way. Now, I don't know how they did it, but what they are trying to make us believe and digest is not the truth. There's just no way it was done that way. None. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to ask you. I wanted your response to that. But let's back up for a second. Again, going back to the Met. The Met has a tomb from Dendera. There, and you've seen it, right, in the big glass room in the back.
I've never been to the Met.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so they have a couple of these walls, and you can walk through these tombs and look at the hieroglyphs on the wall. When you walk through, it's so beautiful. But when you've been to Egypt and you've been, at these temple sites, when you look at the hieroglyphs that are carved into the wall, how do you think that they got that done in granite? I don't even care if it was the Steel Age, right? If it was the Iron Age, how do you think that they got that done? You're an artist.
Well, there's a couple of answers to that. The pedantic answer is there's a couple of tombs where they specifically left the hieroglyphs unfinished, and you can see all the stages that it took. And relief stuff is tough because relief isn't a matter of digging holes in, it's digging everything else away so the hieroglyphs emerge. That's incredibly difficult.
Right.
It was a mystery for me for a long time, but just recently talking to geologists and, more people who are firmly rooted in science but just think in a different way, there's chemical preparations and there's sound technology. There's something you can watch on YouTube where somebody just takes this certain tone and runs it through a copper tube and then presses the tube up against granite, and the vibrations, these micro vibrations, pretty soon you start seeing this dust appear, and within like an hour you can actually carve this perfectly round hole. You've seen that in Egypt. There's these rocks, giant rocks with these perfect laser like drilled holes through them. They're pointing to significant stars and stuff. And it turns out that with a fairly soft metal and some sound generator, you can you can do that stuff. And then also, like I said before, the Moche Indians and a bunch of other peoples know about these certain, what's the word, not an astringent, but like certain acids that you can put together just from plants and stuff that have really unexpected effects on rocks. And but, you know, there's all kinds of other stuff that make it sure appear like somebody just showed up with a lightsaber or lasers or something. There's huge rooms, you know, giant rooms that have a tolerance of less than quarter of an inch over massive periods of time. The only way you can think of that they could create this was if you took an industrial laser, cut through something. Because if it was a saw, you know, these saws would have to be as big as the pyramid in some cases. But there's these perfect lines of tolerance that you would think, I can't imagine how they would do this without lasers. But the cleverness of people, as we talked about, we've been greatly stunted intellectually, and we've been so divorced from the earth. I mean, how startling was it when somebody found that there was a certain kind of mushroom that would activate your pineal gland and show you visions of the afterlife? And it's always been there, just that we were ignorant of it. And those old cultures, part of the reason why it seems like there's this active attempt to kill all the old cultures, there's just this science that was incredibly simple but incredibly smart, and it just took advantage of the amazing things that, you know, physics does, that vibration does, and chemicals do, and maybe all of them together. You know, I would like to think that a large part of construction had to do with the ingestion of magic mushrooms or blue lotus or something. It would just make the whole thing so much more romantic in my eyes. Well, but I don't know. I would love one of the people I'm trying to get on the show, just one of my favorite people in the world, Rupert Sheldrake.
Yep.
I used to be, there's this kind of a long story, I'll tell it quickly. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon, had this experience up in space. And when he came home, he started IONS, the International, something of Noetic Sciences.
Right.
And he was so interested in non-standard states of consciousness after he got back that apparently there's a lot of money in being an astronaut. This guy channeled his fairly respectable fortune into creating this institute that just funded projects that studied different kinds of human consciousness. So I don't know if you know the actor LeVar Burton, beloved LeVar Burton, he was Kunta Kinte in Roots, and George LaForge in Star Trek.
Yep.
So LeVar and I drove up to Esalen to do this show that Edgar Mitchell was paying for. It's called The Science of Peace. And so me and LeVar and Rupert Sheldrake hung out at Esalen, and I had just the funnest time. But what I love about Sheldrake, and John's been friends with Rupert Sheldrake for a long time. John originally told me this, that and also Terrence McKenna and Sheldrake were real good friends growing up.
Yep.
But when you're around Sheldrake, anything that you wonder, speculate, he's just got this aptitude for coming up on the cuff with this double-blind experiment, so that instead of speculating, you can actually start applying science to it to make some definite conclusions. And I don't want to get off on a rant about the destruction of our education system, but back in the days when John West went to school, you didn't learn how to think in school. You learned how to think, and you didn't learn what to think. And then very gradually and very insidiously, the education system has been changed to a more of a parrot model, where there's these basic functions like the trivium and logic and rhetoric and stuff that is really the most important thing you can know. And none of that is actually taught in schools anymore. And so one of the reasons I'm trying to get Sheldrake on the show is just when you learn to think in this way that we should all be thinking in, you don't need speculation, because you can start devising experiments and come to some empirical conclusions. And that's, I think, the thing that Egyptologists and hate the most, because truth is inevitable. It's like a steamroller, and there's nobody that's going to cover something up that's smarter than everybody else and is smarter than everybody's going to be in the future. So everybody that hides something, you can pretty well expect the day is going to come that the inevitable light of truth is going to be made clear. And it's through science. It's through thinking of science, and it's not through propagating conspiracy theories or opinion. I mean, that's important, at least to get people thinking differently. But sooner or later, somebody is going to come up with a series of experiments that prove once and for all these things that we're saying, and that I don't know what the details are going to be, but I think that we're going to be astounded at the intelligence and at the revelatory information it's going to provide about. And it's not about a bunch of rocks. It's about us. Who are we, and what were we capable of in the past? And I think it's going to be really embarrassing when we see how much we've fallen intellectually and have been sort of intellectually and spiritually,
I have to thank you. We're about 20 seconds over, so I apologize to the network before we get that far. But so I'm gonna ask you to hang on. I'll talk to you after the credits roll. So just stay right there, Chance. I got to get out of here. I can already see the network freaking out. Fade to Black. I want to thank Chance Gardner. An amazing conversation tonight. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Renee. Thank you to Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitova, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is only copyrighted 2017 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Tomorrow night, Alexis Brooks right here. But until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.